Hello everyone. We hope you're doing well. We're doing great, and we truly appreciate your ongoing support. We'd like to briefly address some comments regarding our audiobook series. Rest assured, progress is ongoing. That said, your feedback is vital. If there's a novel you particularly enjoy and want to hear more of, please let us know in the comments. Each chapter requires a financial investment, so we can only continue series that receive strong audience interest. Although we retain core names and plot lines, we make significant editorial changes to enhance clarity, pacing, and immersion. These are not simple recitations. We work hard to deliver a polished, thoughtful listening experience. Without sufficient feedback or engagement, we may need to discontinue a series. So if you're enjoying something, don't stay silent. Your input truly matters. Note, our default audio speed is 3x. If that's too fast, let us know. We're happy to adjust it. Interested in early access to unreleased audiobooks? Visit our Patreon. You'll get to experience new content before it reaches YouTube. Just to clarify, I'm a fan like you. I've purchased these novels and adapted them with care, while respecting all rights and guidelines. For updates, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, X. YouTube update: recently, YouTube flagged some of our content for including mature themes, realistic violence, and darker story elements. As a result, we've decided to stop uploading anything that violates YouTube's guidelines. If you'd like access to the full, uncut versions including the more intense or mature content, you can find them on our Patreon page, where we upload everything first. Available now on Patreon: Shattered Innocence transmigrated into a novel as an extra. Transmigrating over 10,000 years late, I was forced to become a mighty presence. I, the celestial dragon, rule the heavens through the double gate, reigning supreme in countless worlds with beast taming, Tower of God sequence strength, cultivation when you take things to the extreme. Naruto is an Uchiha with cyst. WTF, the centuries-old ancestor in our family take concubine again. Plus 18, Ichi, reincarnated in Bleach as a wizard. Thanks for listening and happy listening. Seeing that Hyūga could summon the Scroll of Seals, Tanaka shook his head slightly. In the future, Naruto would be able to steal the Scroll of Seals and learn the multiple shadow clone jutsu. This was clearly Hyūga's deliberate intention. After all, the scroll was controlled by the Hokage of each generation. How could a mere academy student, who wasn't even a genin, simply steal it? If it were truly so easy to steal, why hadn't anyone managed to do so during Tobirama's reign? During the reigns of all previous Hokage, it was only during the third Hokage's tenure that the Scroll of Seals was stolen by Naruto. Tanaka, it's not that I don't want to let you choose an S-rank forbidden jutsu. But forbidden jutsu not only represent immense power, they also violate ethics and morality and can cause harm to the user. You've already developed space-time ninjutsu, which means you have limitless potential. If you delve into S-rank forbidden jutsu too early, you might be unable to control them and suffer severe backlash. Therefore, you must be extremely cautious. Even A-rank forbidden jutsu still carry great risks. Previously, Hyūga had simply not wanted the Hyūga clan to obtain the S-rank forbidden jutsu recorded in the Scroll of Seals. But now, after deciding to instill the will of fire in Tanaka, he genuinely didn't want the boy to train in forbidden jutsu, let alone suffer from its repercussions. Thank you for your warning, Hokage-sama. I was just curious and wanted to broaden my horizons, to gain some insight. As for training in forbidden jutsu, I don't have that intention for now. Tanaka nodded. Hearing that reassures me. Seeing that Tanaka was being sincere rather than merely saying what he thought the Hokage wanted to hear, Hyūga handed over the Scroll of Seals. As expected, the first one is the multiple shadow clone jutsu. Let's see what other forbidden jutsu are recorded here. Holding the Scroll of Seals, Tanaka unrolled it and examined the techniques listed inside. The second one was mutually multiplying explosive tags, followed by Bringer of Darkness jutsu, and Rashomon. After flipping through it for a while, he realized that the scroll didn't only contain forbidden jutsu, it also recorded various ninjutsu, ganjutsu, and taijutsu developed by past Hokage. However, some of these techniques were extremely difficult to master and had prerequisites that later generations could not meet, which led to their classification as forbidden. For example, the first Hokage's wood style. Even his own granddaughter Tsunade couldn't learn it, let alone anyone else. Then there was the second Hokage's water style. Yes, water style. Unlike the water style techniques of Kiri, which often required forming 40+ hand seals, the water style techniques recorded in the Scroll of Seals from Tobirama contain none that exceeded 4 hand seals. The problem was that, despite the low number of seals, the prerequisites for mastering these water style techniques were extremely high. First, one needed chakra reserves comparable to a senju. Second, one required chakra control on par with top-tier medical ninja. These were all A-rank jutsu. As Tanaka continued reading, he realized that about halfway through the scroll, the rest of the pages were completely blank. Techniques like the Flying Thunder God, Edo Tensei, and Spirit Transformation Jutsu were nowhere to be found. Upon seeing this, he immediately understood why Hyūga dared to hand over the entire scroll of seals to him in broad daylight. All S-rank techniques, whether ultimate secrets or forbidden jutsu, had been sealed away. Unless Hyūga himself lifted the seal, even if Tanaka flipped through the entire scroll 100 times, he wouldn't find a single S-rank jutsu or hidden ultimate technique. I found it. This forbidden jutsu. It's really recorded in the scroll of seals. After reading through the entire scroll from beginning to end, Tanaka's gaze finally settled on the second-to-last forbidden jutsu recorded. A Ni-rank forbidden jutsu. The Eight Gates Released Formation. Chapter 73, Setsuna's Shocking Proposal. The fact that the Eight Gates Released Formation was recorded in the scroll of seals did not surprise Tanaka. After all, when Madara saw Guy open the seventh gate, he was rather excited, remarking that the steam was actually red. Later, when Guy opened the eighth gate, Madara even said that it was a rare experience to fight against the Eight Gates Released Formation. This meant that, even before Dewey, the Eight Gates Released Formation had already existed in the shinobi world as a forbidden jutsu, and someone had previously trained it to at least the seventh gate. Even someone like Dewey, a so-called Eternal Geinin, had mastered the Eight Gates Released Formation. So in Hidden Leaf Village, a village with a forbidden jutsu archive overflowing with techniques, it was impossible for them not to have it. However, the training difficulty of the Eight Gates Released Formation was extremely high. It required at least 20 years of effort. Not everyone could succeed. Most people would reach only the second or third gate before their bodies became crippled. Even Kakashi, who had mastered taijutsu to an extraordinary level by his 20s, could only open the first gate. So before Dewey mastered the Eight Gates Released Formation, making a name for himself by defeating the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, neither Hidden Leaf Village nor the entire shinobi world placed much value on taijutsu specialists. Let alone spending 20 years to master the Eight Gates Released Formation. After all, the results were too slow, the risks too high, and ordinary ninjas simply didn't have the time to develop such skills. Even those who wanted to train in it couldn't succeed. The first, second, and third great ninja wars, by the mid-stages of each conflict, major ninja villages were already sending 10-year-old children or younger into battle. Due to all these factors and the state of the shinobi world, even though Hidden Leaf Village possessed the Eight Gates Released Formation, it remained buried in the Forbidden Jutsu archive, collecting dust within the Scroll of Seals. Hokage-sama, I choose the Eight Gates Released Formation. If Hyūga had given him free rein to choose, Tanaka would have undoubtedly picked Edo Tensei. But standing before him was the stingiest Hokage in Hidden Leaf Village's history. Any A-rank forbidden jutsu still sealed away in the Scroll of Seals was either too difficult to train or useless even if mastered. For example, the Eight Gates Released Formation. Or the multiple shadow clone jutsu. The former was too hard to master and required too much time. The latter, unless you were Indra's reincarnation, was completely pointless to learn. The Eight Gates Released Formation? This is a taijutsu-based forbidden jutsu. I've seen quite a few ninjas become crippled from trying to train it. You must be careful. If you truly wish to practice it, make sure to know your limits. Seeing Tanaka choose the Eight Gates Released Formation, Hyūga was not happy at all. In fact, he felt a bit worried. If he had a choice, he would have preferred Tanaka to pick multiple shadow clone jutsu or Rashomon. Those two were the easiest to master and had the lowest risk factor among the forbidden techniques recorded in the Scroll of Seals. He did not want to see Hidden Leaf Village's most talented Hyūga genius cripple himself while training the Eight Gates Released Formation. That would be an absolute waste of his potential. Since I've trained in Gentle Fist from a young age, I've always been curious about strong fist taijutsu styles. Choosing the Eight Gates Released Formation doesn't mean I plan to train in it. I just want to broaden my understanding and build a stronger foundation in taijutsu, Tanaka said casually. Not training in it? Of course, that was a lie. The Eight Gates Released Formation was a technique that could kick an opponent straight into the final battle of a war. In the entire shinobi world, this was the only forbidden jutsu that allowed an ordinary person to reach godlike power and physically fight a god. As for the severe bodily damage caused by opening the gates, he had the Op-Op fruit. What was there to be afraid of? Not to mention, in the One Piece world, there was also the Heal fruit. I wonder if using Haki to harden my body could reduce the damage from opening the gates? Tanaka pondered. From the moment Hyūga said he could pick an A-rank forbidden jutsu after passing the Jonin exam, Tanaka had already made his decision. He would choose between two options, Eight Gates Released Formation and Rashomon. If the Eight Gates Released Formation was available, he would take it. If not, he would go with Rashomon. Even before deciding on the 8 Gates released formation, he had already planned to combine the resources of both the Hokage and One Piece worlds to push the technique to the 8th gate, and not just open it, but open it without dying. Medical ninjutsu. Up fruit hockey. Heal fruit. All of these would serve as the best support in his journey to master the 8 Gates released formation to the final gate, Gate of Death. As long as you know what you're doing. Seeing this, Hiruzen finally relaxed a bit. Indeed, given how much the Hyūga clan cherished Tanaka, even if he truly wanted to train in the 8 Gates released formation, the entire clan would likely oppose it. In the shinobi world, only those without ninjutsu or ganjutsu talent would walk the path of taijutsu and train in forbidden techniques like the 8 Gates released formation. But Tanaka? He was a genius. There was absolutely no reason for him to waste his time training in a foolish taijutsu technique like the 8 Gates released formation. You are all dismissed. With the Jonin exam concluded, Hiruzen completely changed his attitude toward Tanaka. After repeatedly warning him about the dangers of forbidden jutsu, he did not linger in training ground number 3 any longer. Instead, after dismissing the crowd, he left immediately with Minato. Tanaka, Hisashi. If you have some free time, you should visit the Uchiha clan. You, and the Hyūga clan, are always welcome. As soon as Hiruzen left, Fugaku approached Tanaka and Hisashi with an invitation. As two bloodline clans, the Hyūga and Uchiha had always had little interaction in the past. But now that the caged bird no longer restricted the Hyūga clan and Fugaku had witnessed Tanaka's strength firsthand, even the proud Uchiha clan leader chose to lower himself and extend an olive branch. But then, Setsuna said something shocking. My daughter, Mikoto. While not as outrageously talented as you, Tanaka, she is still a genius of the Uchiha clan. She's 17 years old, just about 9 years older than you. And she's quite mature. Similar to Lady Tsunade, just a bit bigger. Setsuna leaned in close to Tanaka's ear and whispered in a voice barely audible. For someone who had never said such things before, especially to an 8-year-old boy, the usually cunning, domineering, and cold-hearted Setsuna seemed uncharacteristically nervous and hesitant in his speech. Is this some kind of ganjutsu? Tanaka stared blankly at the ever-serious and stern-faced man in front of him, doubting whether he had just been caught in some sort of illusion technique. Realizing how shocking his own words sounded and how out of character they were, Setsuna, instead of explaining, simply nodded in confirmation in response to Tanaka's questioning gaze. Tanaka fell silent. Although Setsuna didn't say anything more, Tanaka could still hear his voice in his head. Tanaka, do you want Mikoto? If you need a wife, just say the word, and I'll send her over immediately. Thinking about this, Tanaka subconsciously glanced at someone nearby, not at Setsuna, but at Fugaku. No wonder. It all made sense now. If Setsuna had such old man tendencies, then it must mean that Fugaku was still single at this moment. Chapter 74, Loving an Uchiha is Suicide. What did Setsuna just say to you? Acting all secretive. Clearly up to no good. Only after Fugaku and Setsuna had left did Tsunade finally speak. Nothing much. Tanaka opened his mouth, wanting to explain, but in the end, he couldn't say it like that. There was no way. He couldn't just tell Tsunade that Setsuna had the same idea about her as Hyūga Tsunade. He wanted Mikoto to change her surname and become Hyūga Mikoto. There's something I must remind you of. The Uchiha clan is different from other clans. On the surface, they seem like normal people, but once they awaken their Sharingan, most of them start developing mental instability. The more times their Sharingan evolves, the stronger their eye power becomes, the worse their condition gets. Some extreme cases even use their loved ones as sacrifices to awaken or evolve their Sharingan. Take Setsuna, for example. In order to awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan, he personally killed his own disciple and best friend. But in the end, he still failed to awaken it. When Tsunade spoke about Setsuna, her voice was filled with undisguised disgust. I see. Upon hearing this, Tanaka fell into deep thought. He finally understood why, during Tobirama's rule, suppressing and guarding against the Uchiha clan was completely reasonable. After all, back in the Warring States period, most of Tobirama's brothers had died at the hands of the Uchiha. It was also understandable why Hidden Leaf Village's top brass, including Danzō, sought to eradicate the Uchiha. After all, the members of Hidden Leaf Village Council were all taught by Tobirama. But there was one thing Tanaka had never been able to figure out: why were the Uchiha so universally hated in Hidden Leaf Village? From the Hokage down to ordinary ninja clans, except for Minato and Kushina, almost no one in Hidden Leaf Village's leadership had a good relationship with the Uchiha clan. Tsunade had finally cracked the case. It wasn't that the Uchiha were inherently detestable. It wasn't that no one wanted to befriend them. It was that they couldn't afford to. The closer you got, the faster you died. The stronger the bond, the worse your fate. Who would want to risk becoming a stepping stone for an Uchiha's sharing an evolution? Being a ninja was already a high-risk profession. Before even becoming an adult, you had to go to war. Even after reaching adulthood, you had to keep going to war, constantly walking the thin line between life and death. With that kind of mental pressure, just knowing that the Uchiha could awaken their eyes by sacrificing loved ones was enough to make anyone close to them feel chills down their spine. And then there was the fact that from Tobirama to the Hidden Leaf Village Council, the Uchiha were constantly suppressed and monitored. The other major ninja clans naturally chose to keep their distance to avoid trouble. I'm glad you understand. Tsunade nodded, then a thoughtful expression crossed her face. If you want to practice the 8 gates, you can, but you must notify me first. You can only train when I'm around. If I'm not present, you are not allowed to touch this technique. Tsunade's insight was certainly not inferior to Orochimaru's. Through her previous intelligence gathering and her close interaction with Tanaka just now, she knew that despite his young age, he was highly strategic, someone who thought 3 steps ahead but acted only 1 step at a time. Since he chose the 8 gates released formation from among the many A-rank forbidden techniques in the sealed scroll, he must have his reasons. So instead of warning him off like Hiruzen might have, Tsunade decided to supervise his training personally. Thank you, Lady Tsunade. Having the top medical ninja assisting him in his training was an unexpected blessing. Although he had eaten the apop fruit, he didn't actually know medical ninjutsu or pharmacology, and his body was still developing. With Tsunade's help, even if he couldn't completely eliminate the risks of training the 8 gates, at least for the first few gates, things wouldn't go terribly wrong. Even if he messed up his training, with the combination of the apop fruit and Tsunade's medical skills, they could still pull his body back from the brink. I'm not looking forward to you crippling yourself and then leaving no one to send me money. Tsunade snorted lightly, turned her head, and walked away. There was too much that had happened today. She needed time to go back and process everything. Only after she left did the other clan leaders dare to approach and greet Tanaka. After chatting for a while with the heads of Inara, Akimaki, and Yamanaka clans, everyone eventually dispersed and returned to their respective homes. Brilliant. Your move to send money to Lady Tsunade was truly brilliant. As Hisashi walked alongside Tanaka back toward their clan compound, he spoke with admiration. As for whether anyone nearby was eavesdropping? Please, he had the Byakugan, he would know. Without the caged bird, the Hyūga clan is just another Uchiha clan in the eyes of the village. No matter how much effort we put into building relationships, in the end, we'll still be treated with suspicion. But she is different. When the village and all the major clans refused to support her, you stood by her side. Compared to gaining the friendship of one of the Sannin, the consequences of opposing the third Hokage, or a bit of money, are insignificant. Let alone half of the Hyūga clan's wealth, so what if we gave all of it to her? Hisashi sighed in admiration. During the vote earlier, he had been completely shocked by Tanaka's decision. But after calming down and thinking it through, he almost wanted to slam the table in praise. Was half of the Hyūga clan's wealth a lot? Yes, it was a huge sum. But money, to a prestigious clan like the Hyūga, was nothing more than numbers unless their entire financial chain collapses. Forget the rewards from missions, just the clan's former main house-owned businesses within the village generated immense daily income. The money spent on Tsunade today would be earned back in time. But the friendship of one of the Sannin? That wasn't something money could buy. Especially now, when faced with Hiruzen's subtle suppression and targeting, Tsunade had openly stood in front of Tanaka, shielding him from the storm, repeatedly challenging the third Hokage head-on. Just now was another example. The greatest medical ninja had become Tanaka's personal doctor, an exclusive one, at that. Could money buy this kind of privilege? Even back in the days of the first and second Hokage, no, even when Mundo was still alive, no amount of money could have persuaded Tsunade to do this. But now, not only had she practically become the Hyūga's friend, but in the near future, she would train 100 medical ninja for the Hyūga clan. For a clan that relied on the gentle fist, the body was of utmost importance. No matter how much chakra they had or how strong their taijutsu was, if their body failed them, it was all meaningless. But now, with Tsunade and 100 trained medical ninja, the Hyūga clan would never have to worry about injuries or illnesses again. Training in the gentle fist, developing the Byakugan, so long as they didn't completely cripple themselves, they could train as hard as they wanted. Chapter 75, From one prison to another. It was so difficult to escape from the cage, yet now, I'm about to step into another one. Facing Hisashi's continuous praise, Tanaka glanced at the Hidden Leaf Village forehead protector in his hand but did not put it on his forehead. Another cage? Upon hearing this, Hisashi was momentarily stunned, then his gaze fell upon the Hidden Leaf Village forehead protector in the other's hand. Don't you think it looks similar, Hisashi-sensei? In my view, The Hidden Leaf Village Forehead Protector is the second cage placed on the heads of the Hyūga clan. Tanaka's words were shocking. Tanaka, watch your words. Hisashi's expression changed drastically upon hearing this. Was this something that could be said out in the open? Such words could only be spoken within the Hyūga clan's territory. Don't worry, besides you and me, no third person will hear this. Seeing Hisashi's extremely cautious demeanor, Tanaka couldn't help but chuckle. The Hidden Leaf Village of the Second Great Ninja War was not the same as the Hidden Leaf Village of the 12 Guardian Ninja era. At this moment, the entire Hidden Leaf Village was covered by a barrier. Whether in the streets and alleys or within the clans, they were all under surveillance by Anbu and Root. Censor-type ninjas were everywhere. Understanding how strong Hidden Leaf Village was now, whenever he talked about sensitive topics, Tanaka would first activate room to confine the sound within its range. Let's talk when we get back. Even though Hisashi had witnessed Tanaka's ability to isolate sound, he still did not dare to discuss such topics in broad daylight on the streets of Hidden Leaf Village. Tanaka just smiled at that. The two stopped talking and walked side by side. Because the Hyūga clan had recently undergone too many changes, they were lost in their own thoughts. 20 more days. Rosinant will arrive at Minion Island. For now, I'll focus on developing the Op fruit and training in Gentle Fist. Once I obtain Haki, I'll attempt to train in the 8 gates. Tanaka highly valued the 8 gates. In his heart, this forbidden technique was second only to the Op fruit. However, considering the dangers of the 8 gates released formation, plus the fact that his body hadn't even reached puberty yet, let alone its peak, he didn't plan to start training in it immediately. Instead, he would focus on research and theoretical learning. Ideally, he could use Tsunoda's knowledge, experience, and medical ninja expertise to his advantage. With these skills, combined with the Op fruit and the Byakugan, he would be able to fine-tune the 8 gates. Even if he couldn't completely eliminate its side effects, he would at least ensure that the backlash from opening the gates remained within a controllable range. As for seeking meat, aside from providing it exclusively to Hisashi-sensei, Natsu, and the others, it will also be open to the Hyūga clan. However, strict regulations must be in place. From the chefs who cook it, to its transportation, and finally to the clan members consuming it, everything must be strictly monitored. If done right, before the war resurfaces, the overall strength of the Hyūga clan will have improved significantly. Although the current Hyūga clan was essentially under his and Hisashi's control, and no one would dare to object to this decision, he understood the responsibilities that came with power. Having just invested half of the Hyūga clan's wealth into Tsunoda, even if Hisashi praised him and fully supported the decision, as a future leader, he couldn't just keep taking from the clan without giving back. Seeking meat was the best way to give back to the Hyūga. Normally, whether it was the Uchiha or the Hyūga, their upper limit was Elite Jonin or higher, the first through awakening the Mangekyo Sharingan, and the latter through evolving the Byakugan. Unless one was an exception like Madara or Hashirama, who were essentially reincarnations of the Sage of Six Paths sons, Elite Jonin was the limit. Don't be fooled into thinking that the members of major bloodline clans only could reach this level. Elite Jonin actually formed the backbone of the 5 great shinobi villages. But unlike civilian or non-bloodline ninjas, they had a higher base level. For the Uchiha, as long as one awakened the 3 Tomoe Sharingan and trained seriously, they were guaranteed to reach Jonin before 25 and Elite Jonin before 30. In other words, for an Uchiha with 3 Tomoe Sharingan, Elite Jonin was both their limit and their baseline. The same applied to the Hyūga. Without the caged bird restricting them, if they develop the Byakugan and train in secret Hyūga techniques, they are guaranteed to reach Jonin before 25 and Elite Jonin before 30. Now, if you add seeking meat to the mix, it would provide a significant advantage to the Hyūga. With their specialization in Gentle Fist, the Byakugan, and Taijutsu, their limit would no longer be just Elite Jonin. Take Hisashi as an example. Coming from the branch house and never having learned secret clan techniques, he still managed to reach Jonin solely through talent and personal effort. If he had access to secret techniques and the enhancement of seeking meat, he wouldn't just stop at Elite Jonin level, he might even be able to challenge actual Kage level strength. In other words, with seeking meat, the Hyūga clan would never lack Elite Jonin in the future. The Hyūga's limit would no longer be Elite Jonin, it would rise to close to Kage level. Tanaka, having personally consumed seeking meat, understood its effects better than anyone. Especially considering that the meat he ate came from a small seeking. If, in the future, large seekings become a staple in the Hyūga diet, reaching Kage level for every member might be unrealistic, but above Elite Jonin? That would be completely achievable. Even with the missions at the Hokage building, the Hyūga clan can still muster around 150 available shinobi. 100 of them will be sent to Lady Tsunoda to learn medical ninjutsu, while 50 will stay to guard the clan and maintain daily operations. The number of clan members is barely enough. Hyūga carefully calculated every available clan member, making sure each one was used efficiently, yet he still felt the manpower was insufficient. If only Tanaka had been born a few years earlier, before the outbreak of the Second Great Ninja War. Back then, the Hyūga clan had nearly 1,000 members. Thinking about how the war had halved their numbers, his heart ached. Especially after just learning in the meeting room that Tsukumo had committed suicide. Hyūga had no doubt. Once news of the White Fang's death spread across the shinobi world, the four great nations would definitely stir. Hidden Sand Village and Hidden Clouds Village, in particular, would not remain idle. By then, the war that should have ended would inevitably reignite. And what path should the Hyūga take? This was where Tanaka and Hyūga differed. For the upcoming war, the former was ambitious, carefully planning his strategies, while the latter felt powerless, merely going along with the tides. The two walked in silence, deep in thought, until the gates of the Hyūga estate came into view, pulling them back to reality. Orochimaru-sama, we've arrived. Tanaka suddenly halted at the entrance, speaking without turning his head. Orochimaru-sama? Hyūga, who had already stepped into the compound, tensed upon hearing this. Lost in his thoughts, and with Tanaka staying silent, he had instinctively deactivated his Byakugan. Now, alerted by Tanaka's words, he reflexively reactivated it. Nothing? Scanning his surroundings, he initially saw no trace of Orochimaru. But then, as a sudden realization struck him, he quickly directed his gaze downward. What he saw made his blood run cold. Directly beneath the ground where they were standing, about 30 meters deep, was a familiar figure. As if sensing his gaze, the hidden Orochimaru slowly tilted his head upward. It was as if he was staring directly at Hyūga, through layers of earth and stone. Chapter 76, The Snake Beneath Your Feet. When? Has he been following us ever since we left training ground? Realizing that Orochimaru had been lurking beneath his feet, hidden underground, Hyūga tensed up, his body covered in goosebumps. He had made a mistake. When activating his Byakugan, he was accustomed to scanning the back and sky, neglecting what lay beneath his feet. Especially when it was 30 meters underground. After all, penetrating 30 meters deep into the earth consumed far more chakra than seeing through buildings on the surface. Being in Hidden Leaf Village, neither out on a mission nor on the battlefield, he had never developed the habit of expending chakra to observe underground. Even so, his Byakugan was not just for show, and his strength as a Hyūga Jonin was undeniable. Orochimaru had followed him all the way home, moving undetected and right under his nose. If it weren't for Tanaka's warning, he would have walked through his front door completely unaware. At this moment, Hyūga truly understood the gap between himself and one of the Sannin. If Orochimaru had intended to harm him, he probably wouldn't have realized it until the moment of his death. Unlike the sweat-drenched Hyūga, Tanaka stood calmly at the entrance of the clan compound. He turned around, watching as Orochimaru emerged from underground like a fish swimming up through water. His expression remained as composed as ever. Welcome to my Hyūga clan, Orochimaru-sama. Only after the snake Sannin fully surfaced did Tanaka speak, his tone neither warm nor cold. Your Hyūga clan? Hearing this, Orochimaru's gaze flickered across the scene, first to Hyūga, then to the two Hyūga guards stationed at the gate, and finally to the three hidden Hyūga watching from the shadows. Seeing their impassive faces, it was clear that they all genuinely acknowledged Tanaka's authority. Hey, it seems your influence within the Hyūga clan is far greater than I had imagined. A smirk crept onto Orochimaru's lips as he let out a low chuckle. Orochimaru-sama, Hyūga spoke with a trace of displeasure in his voice. If you wished to visit the Hyūga clan as a guest, I would have welcomed you. But following me all the way here in secret, don't you think that's a bit disrespectful? In terms of strength, the Sannin could defeat him with one hand, that much Hyūga acknowledged. But even so, he was still the clan leader of the Hyūga clan. Such actions, in the shinobi world, could easily lead to conflict. If it weren't for his naturally mild temperament, his time as a branch house member in the past, and the simple fact that he couldn't win in a fight, he might have retaliated immediately. Had it been Hyūga instead, and had Orochimaru been anyone other than himself, a gentle fist strike would have already been launched. Disrespectful? I don't think so. Before coming here, I already sent my visiting card ahead to Tanaka. You simply failed to notice it. Otherwise, do you really think he would have welcomed me so politely after I followed you all the way here? Orochimaru cast a glance at Hyūga. It was unusual for him to acknowledge a mere jonin, let alone offer an explanation. But that was only because Tanaka intrigued him greatly. Otherwise, if it were just Hyūga, even as the clan leader, he wouldn't have spared him a second glance. To him, bloodline clans were insignificant unless they had Kage-level powerhouses. A visiting card? Hyūga frowned slightly. But as a battle-hardened jonin who had fought his way to the clan leader position, He quickly reviewed his interactions with Orochimaru from the moment he and Tanaka had entered the meeting room. The Kusanagi sword. A glint flashed in his Byakugan as the realization slipped from his lips. That's right. A first meeting, a formal visit, I couldn't come empty-handed. And since he lacked a proper weapon, the Kusanagi sword was the perfect gift, both as a visiting card and a meeting present. Orochimaru stared directly at Tanaka, and the more he looked, the more undisguised admiration flickered in his snake-like pupils. He had seen many with extraordinary talent. He had seen even more with great abilities. But someone who possessed both the overwhelming talent to surpass an entire village's shinobi, the wisdom to strategize, keen insight, and an impeccable temperament, such individuals were exceedingly rare. Over the years, he had only seen two. One was Minato. The other was Tanaka. But Minato had already grown into his potential and was now under Hiruzen's command. Compared to Tanaka, he was slightly lacking in every aspect. Moreover, Minato's journey had been far too smooth. After displaying his talent at a young age, he was immediately noticed by Hiruzen, who arranged a mentor for him. He was given an opportunity to forge a bond with the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki through the classic hero saves the maiden scenario. After graduation, he was assigned Jiraiya as his personal teacher, receiving guidance. From then on, he had access to the Uzumaki clan sealing techniques, the second Hokage's flying thunder god jutsu, as well as countless jutsu, forbidden techniques, taijutsu, and ganjutsu. Everything was laid out for him. Tanaka, on the other hand, was born into the branch house, branded with the caged bird, and orphaned when his parents died in battle. If fate had not intervened, he would have lived his life in obscurity. Yet, through his own strength, with just one sword, he shattered the caged bird, massacred the main house, and seized control of the Hyūga clan. In terms of talent, intelligence, methods, and temperament, he had maxed out every attribute. Even Orochimaru, known for his discerning eye, could not find a single flaw in him. If not for Nawaki's death, which had extinguished his desire to take on a disciple, he would have seriously considered making Tanaka his final apprentice. Was this intentional? Hisashi murmured, deep in thought. No wonder. At their first meeting, Orochimaru had voluntarily dropped loot for Tanaka, and not just any loot, but one of the legendary weapons of the shinobi world. The Kusanagi sword. Rather than a mere test, it was more like the Sannin had found an excuse to form a connection with Tanaka. This arrangement conveniently developed right under the watchful eyes of the third Hokage. Of course, if the intelligence about space-time ninjutsu had been false and Tanaka had failed to claim the Kusanagi sword first, Orochimaru would have taken it back without hesitation. After all, he only befriended geniuses, he had no interest in the mediocre. For one of the Sannin to lower himself and establish ties with a kid, even offering the Kusanagi sword as a gift, the recipient had to be someone of extraordinary weight. Come inside, Orochimaru-sama. Tanaka invited the Sannin in. From the moment Orochimaru presented the Kusanagi sword, he had sensed that something was amiss. Combining that with the subsequent Jonin exam and Orochimaru's subtle hints, he had pieced everything together. Orochimaru's interest in him was genuine. However, the immediate testing upon their first encounter, along with Hiruzen's delayed response, made it clear, this was done with Hiruzen's approval. The purpose? First, to create potential hostility between Orochimaru and himself. Second, to gather intelligence on him. The Sannin was well aware of Hiruzen's intentions, which was why he had immediately dropped loot. More than enough to suppress any dissatisfaction. And, by framing it as a snatched weapon, the method of giving the sword wasn't an act of aggression, it was practically forcing Tanaka to accept the Kusanagi sword. Testing and gathering information. Presenting the Kusanagi sword was both a welcome gift and a signal of goodwill. As for the act of tailing him just now, it was merely to establish a hierarchy between them. To put it simply, I followed you all the way to your doorstep, and you didn't even notice. Do you still think you can sit as my equal? Clearly, Hisashi could not. But Tanaka could. Chapter 77, When Orochimaru Speaks Truth. Forget everything you just saw and heard. After Orochimaru entered the door with Tanaka, Hisashi ordered the clan members who had just seen the Sannin to forget everything they had just witnessed and heard. Yes. Both the openly stationed guards and the hidden sentries nodded in agreement. After giving these instructions, Hisashi quickly turned around and followed after them. Watching the two figures ahead, one tall and one small, conversing harmoniously, he couldn't help but sigh once again. His disciple was truly leading the Hyūga clan to heights that rightfully belonged to them, time and time again. He understood very well. Without Tanaka, neither Tsunade nor Orochimaru would even bother to glance at the Hyūga clan. They wouldn't even spare them a look. It was just like during the main house's rule, when Hisashi was in power. Which of the Sannin had ever presented the Hyūga clan with the Kusanagi sword upon meeting them? Which of them had ever declared that they would change their surname to Hyūga? Which of them had ever visited the Hyūga estate? Which of them had ever offered to train 100 medical ninja for the Hyūga clan? None of them. Not a single one. It was only because of Tanaka that Orochimaru gifted the Kusanagi sword and personally visited. It was because of him that Tsunade went to great lengths to protect the Hyūga, even leading to the rumor of Hyūga Tsunade. Hisashi had seen all of this clearly and understood it completely. If the Hyūga clan lost Tanaka, even if the caged bird was abolished, they would still be insignificant in the eyes of the great powers, and the Sannin wouldn't spare them a second glance. What brings you here so urgently, Orochimaru-sama? After they both sat down in the hall, Tanaka directly asked about Orochimaru's purpose. After their previous encounters and the conversation they had just had, he had developed some understanding of Orochimaru. He also understood the best way to interact with his Sannin, get straight to the point. Small talk was for deceiving subordinates and enemies, not for dealing with people on the same level, especially those qualified to stand beside him. What do you think of the third Hokage? Orochimaru was quite pleased with Tanaka's straightforwardness. He pursued immortality and all the ninjutsu of the world. With a limited lifespan, he dedicated every moment to chasing longevity and knowledge. Because of this, he valued his time greatly. And it was only because Tanaka continuously surprised him, proving his worth again and again, that he was willing to invest so much time and thought into him. If it were anyone else, even Minato, Orochimaru wouldn't have bothered. The main house of Hidden Leaf Village. The caged bird of Hidden Leaf Village. Tanaka casually tossed his forehead protector onto the table. Had he been in the era of the first, second, or even the fourth or fifth Hokage, he would never have treated this forehead protector with such disregard. But he didn't care. Ever since he awakened his past memories, he had found himself in the timeline where Hiruzen ruled. As for the third Hokage, it was difficult for him to feel any respect. A person who, even before meeting him, was already analyzing, probing, suppressing, and planning to control him. How could he possibly like such a person? Hey, looks like I wasn't wrong about you. We are the same kind of people. Orochimaru's snake-like pupils gleamed with excitement. He was very pleased with Tanaka's frankness and sharp response. If Tanaka had been evasive and started talking about the will of fire, he would have already stood up and left. As for the Kusanagi sword, he would have simply accepted that he had misjudged. Are these the kinds of conversations I should be hearing? Orochimaru was happy, but Hisashi was terrified. Even though he was the Hyūga clan leader, a person of high status, he felt that this conversation was something he shouldn't be privy to. If this weren't his own home, he might have already found an excuse to leave. The third Hokage has changed. When rumors about the White Fang started spreading throughout the village. When he abandoned his mission to save his comrades, only to be met with public scorn, I understood. The hero I once remembered had already been corrupted by the power of the Hokage. Orochimaru completely ignored Hisashi's twitching eyelids and continued speaking to himself. So what? Tanaka picked up his teacup and took a sip of tea. The one originally meant to be your opponent in the Jonin examination was supposed to be Minato, but the Hokage instead chose his own son. He's willing to sacrifice his own child to pave the way for Minato, just to make sure that before Minato becomes the fourth Hokage, not even a single feather of his is tainted. Not even a speck of dirt. Orochimaru let out a mocking laugh. In his eyes, was a Hokage something that could be nurtured? No. A Hokage had to be forged through battle. A Hokage raised in a greenhouse, no matter how talented, would never be the same as one who had fought their way through mountains of corpses and rivers of blood. The former was nothing more than a puppet of the so-called will of fire. The latter was a true Hokage. That was why, in reality, only 3 Hokage had ever truly held supreme power over Hidden Leaf Village, Hashirama, Tobirama, and Hiruzen. After them, whether it was Minato, Tsunade, or even Kakashi as the 6th Hokage, they were all merely chosen and groomed. Even Naruto, who would one day become the strongest in the shinobi world, was still treated as insignificant by any random special Jonin working on scientific ninja tools in Hidden Leaf Village. Not to mention, among the Hidden Leaf Village council members, 2 of them would survive all the way into the 7th Hokage's era, constantly advising Naruto on how to run the village. So, does this mean you plan to run for the position of 4th Hokage? Tanaka looked at Orochimaru with interest. Tanaka, are you interested in power? Yes. But not for the sake of power itself, rather, because neither of us wants someone standing above us. Orochimaru suddenly changed his tone, his hoarse voice carrying a complex emotion. Hokage. I could be one, but he would never let me. I could accept the White Fang as the 4th Hokage, but I cannot accept Minato as the predetermined choice for that position. His words were shocking. If even a single sentence from what he had just said spread throughout Hidden Leaf Village, it would cause an uproar. Orochimaru would immediately face suppression from Hiruzen. Yet, he still chose to speak openly in front of Tanaka. Because after just one encounter, he could already see that the way Tanaka thought was far beyond what an 8-year-old child should be capable of. So, when dealing with him, Orochimaru never treated him as a child, but as an equal. No wonder. Tanaka looked at Orochimaru in front of him, and he understood. Whether it was the second or the third Great Ninja War, Orochimaru had never been absent. He had fought through both wars from start to finish. Yet in the future, he would fall from being one of the Sannin to conducting experiments on Hidden Leaf Village as own ninja, eventually becoming a missing ninja hunted by all. At its core, it was because the third Hokage had betrayed him. Hidden Leaf Village had betrayed him. The shinobi world had betrayed him. The idea that the third Hokage saw the ambition hidden in Orochimaru's eyes and therefore didn't let him become Hokage was a story only naive people like Naruto would believe. Ever since Tobirama, the position of Hokage had always been predetermined. Hiruzen was chosen by Tobirama. Minato was chosen by Hiruzen. Tsunade was chosen by Koharu, Hamura, and Jiraiya. Even the transitional Hokage, Kakashi, and Naruto himself were predetermined. The only Hokage who had ever truly fought for the title were only two, the first Hokage and the second Hokage. Chapter 78, I don't believe a single word if you fully support me. As long as I become the fourth Hokage, I promise that after I take power, no one will dare to put something like this on you or the Hyūga clan ever again. Orochimaru glanced at the Hidden Leaf Village forehead protector placed on the table. He spoke bluntly, without any hesitation or sugarcoating. Compared to Hiruzen, though he didn't like making empty promises, he was just as generous to those he recognized. Like the Kusanagi sword, if he said he'd give it, he'd give it. You know, I come from a civilian background, and my parents and students are already gone. I am completely different from the third Hokage. If I become the fourth Hokage, the ones who benefit from it won't be my non-existent family, it will be the Hyūga clan behind you. I don't have much interest in power, so after me, the fifth Hokage will be you, Tanaka. As soon as Orochimaru finished speaking, Hisashi's eyes burned with excitement, and his breathing became rapid. It was clear how tempting his offer was. At the very least, Hisashi couldn't resist it at all. You become Hokage, and the Hyūga clan benefits. You become Hokage, and I take the fifth Hokage position. Then, what about Danzō? Tanaka's expression remained calm, his eyes as still as deep water, completely unmoved by Orochimaru's offer. Interesting. I didn't expect you to see through this as well. That only further proves that choosing you over him is the right decision. Orochimaru's snake-like eyes narrowed slightly at Tanaka's words, but he still smiled as he spoke. If he became the fourth Hokage, it was obvious what Danzō would gain. The cake is only shared with partners, who would give a slice to a disposable pawn. Or rather, a tool. Of course, tools and partners are not fixed roles, they can change. Take the Hyūga clan, for example. In the past, they weren't even qualified to be Orochimaru's tools. But now, because of Tanaka's sudden rise, they had become his partners. Is that so? Tanaka smirked slightly, as if he didn't fully believe Orochimaru. Of course. Seeing that Tanaka remained unmoved, Orochimaru reached into his mouth and pulled out a wet scroll. Tanaka wasn't disgusted by this at all, instead, he became even more interested. If Orochimaru kept it inside his body, it definitely wasn't some common item you could find lying around. It had to be high quality. For example, he had stored the scroll containing the Kusanagi sword inside his body before. Your chakra nature is earth, water, lightning, and yang, correct? This scroll contains sword techniques I've gathered over the years, including the Hidden Leaf Village swordsmanship developed by the second Hokage, as well as the Hotakei swordsmanship of the White Fang. After finishing, Orochimaru placed the scroll on the table. The swordsmanship of the White Fang. How did it end up in your hands, Orochimaru-sama? Hisashi stared intently at the scroll on the table. Although the Hyūga clan was known for its gentle fist style, as a noble clan, they naturally had access to other techniques beyond taijutsu, such as ninjutsu, ganjutsu, and swordsmanship. However, when it came to techniques on par with the Hidden Leaf Village swordsmanship or the Hotakei swordsmanship, especially the Hotakei swordsmanship, due to the legendary reputation of Sakamo, his swordsmanship had become one of the most sought-after techniques in the 5 great ninja villages in recent years. Hisashi, you don't think that just by mastering Hotakei swordsmanship, someone can become the next White Fang, do you? Orochimaru responded with a question instead of answering. Hisashi fell silent. Indeed, just like how many Uchiha possessed the Sharingan, but only a handful could awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan, and only one Madara existed. Relying on a single bloodline ability to stand at the peak of the ninja world wasn't impossible, but it would have to be something like the Tenseigan or the Rinnegan. At the very least, it would require an eternal Mangekyo Sharingan or wood style. Not to mention trying to recreate the White Fang with just a sword style. Sakamo wielded the White Light Chakra saber and was a warrior who shook the ninja world, standing above all other ninja. Kakashi wielded the Tanto and couldn't even keep it intact, allowing an Hidden Stones village Jonin to break it. The Hatakera swordsmanship, in the past, was at most a second-tier style in the ninja world. Until Sakamo appeared. He integrated sword techniques from various styles across the shinobi world, borrowed taijutsu techniques from Hidden Cloud's village, improved Hatakera with the Hidden Leaf village's swordsmanship, and eventually created a style of his own. That was how Hidden Leaf village's White Fang shook the ninja world. Or rather, it should be called White Fang swordsmanship. As for why I have it in my possession, the answer is simple: exchange. After hearing Orochimaru's explanation, Hisashi finally understood. After all, Hidden Leaf Village's White Fang wasn't born into a noble clan like the Senju, Uchiha, or Hyūga. To master a sword technique that could intimidate even the 5 Kage, he had to study techniques from many different schools. Exchanging sword techniques was undoubtedly an effective way to achieve that. Tanaka glanced at the scroll in front of Orochimaru but didn't speak immediately. Instead, he carefully considered the offer. For taijutsu, I already have the Gentle Fist and the 8 Gates. Later, when I travel to the One Piece world, I'll acquire the Marine 6 Styles techniques. For ninjutsu, the Hyūga clan has collected techniques covering all 5 chakra natures over the years. That should be enough. As for Genjutsu, the Byakugan is an eye meant for taijutsu. Unless it evolves into the Tenseigan, it won't provide much advantage for Genjutsu. But if it does evolve into the Tenseigan, even high-level Genjutsu like Tsukaimi or Koto Mitsukami would have little effect on me. Probably. But swordsmanship. It's a technique that can be combined with ninjutsu, similar to nintaijutsu, and in the One Piece world, it can also be integrated with Haki and Devil Fruit abilities. At this thought, he had to admit Orochimaru truly had a sharp eye. From the first time they met in the conference room, the Sannin had already been planning how to pull him into his schemes. He saw that Tanaka used swords but lacked a great weapon. So, the first major reward he offered was the Kusanagi sword. He understood the foundation of the Hyūga clan. They lacked neither taijutsu nor ninjutsu, and they didn't focus on Genjutsu. But they did lack a sword style that could match the Kusanagi sword. So, for the next big offer, he provided Hidden Leaf Village's swordsmanship, White Fang's swordsmanship, and a collection of sword techniques from various major schools that he had gathered over the years. Alright. After a moment of silence, Tanaka met Orochimaru's snake-like eyes and nodded in agreement. I knew it, you wouldn't disappoint me. Of course, I will never disappoint you. Seeing that his goal had been achieved, Orochimaru left after offering a few more tempting promises. He didn't even wait for Tanaka or Hisashi to see him off. As always, he moved swiftly and decisively. What do you think about this situation? And Orochimaru's promises? As soon as Orochimaru left, Hisashi activated his Byakugan. He scanned everything, ensuring no one was eavesdropping. Only then did he turn to ask Tanaka. I don't believe a single word Orochimaru said. Tanaka answered bluntly. What? You mean his real intention is to collaborate with Danzō, not the Hyūga clan? He was deceiving both you and me just now? Hisashi's expression darkened. He had always been wary of Orochimaru. After all, no ninja would fully trust another. Even parents and children weren't completely honest with each other, let alone Orochimaru and the Hyūga clan. But he hadn't considered the possibility that Orochimaru was outright deceiving them. Hisashi-sensei, I don't care who Orochimaru really wants to work with. I only know one thing, power comes from strength, and to hold power, you must first hold strength. The stronger your fist, the greater your authority. The title of Hokage is decided by the strength of one's grip. Tanaka opened his palm, slightly curling his 5 fingers inward, as if he wasn't just clenching a fist, but grasping the power of the Hokage itself. Chapter 79, Drowning in Misunderstanding. Hisashi's breath hitched, his body trembled violently, and goosebumps covered his entire body. At this moment, he once again realized the vast difference between himself and Tanaka. Facing the visiting Orochimaru, what he had been thinking about was how the Hyūga clan should cooperate with Hidden Leaf Village, while his disciple was thinking about how to seize control of the Hokage's power. It is precisely this kind of mindset and awareness that allowed him to avoid despair even after being branded with a caged bird. The more Hisashi thought about it, the more moved he became. He deeply felt that the difference between himself and Tanaka was not just in talent, strength, or vision, but in courage and determination. Since you have such grand ambitions, I can rest assured. After all, sooner or later, the Hyūga clan will end up in your hands. Tell me, who should we support for Hokage? As your teacher, I will support whoever the Hyūga clan should support. After this event, his understanding of his role as the clan leader became even clearer. In simple terms, wherever Tanaka pointed, that's where the Hyūga clan would strike. Why support anyone? Tanaka looked at his teacher, seemingly unable to understand why, even now, Hisashi was still thinking about supporting someone else for Hokage to elevate the Hyūga clan. Leaning on others is unreliable. The only reliable one is yourself. This was a truth he had engraved into his very bones the moment he was branded with the caged bird. So, you're saying we shouldn't support anyone? Hisashi was slightly taken aback, struggling to process the idea. The Hyūga clan should have their own Hokage. What do you think, Hisashi-sensei? As soon as Tanaka spoke those words, it was like a thunderclap out of nowhere, leaving Hisashi completely stunned. So, are you planning to marry Tsunade? Hisashi's sudden question left his disciple utterly dumbfounded. What does that have to do with it? Tanaka's expression stiffened. He couldn't understand why, after just talking about the Hyūga clan having their own Hokage, Hisashi had suddenly skipped over the Orochimaru topic and instead brought up Tsunade. Isn't it obvious? If the Hyūga clan is to have its own Hokage, all you have to do is marry her. After that, we can unite the entire clan to support her in becoming Hokage. That way, we will have a Hokage who truly belongs to the Hyūga clan. Compared to Orochimaru, only a Hokage with the surname Hyūga is worth trusting. Hisashi couldn't help but admire and respect Tanaka's decision. When it came to the Hokage, only someone with the name Hyūga could be trusted. Orochimaru? No way. Now, it was Tanaka's turn to be completely speechless. Hisashi had taken his words, broken them down piece by piece, and somehow arrived at this conclusion. Wait a minute. Isn't there also the possibility that when I said the Hyūga should have their own Hokage, I was referring to myself? Tanaka opened his mouth to explain, but his teacher had already turned and walked away. Just focus on your training. As for Tsunade, leave it to me. I will personally ensure everything works out. She wants to establish a medical ninja training program, right? The Hyūga clan will provide the money, manpower, and resources. Even if we have to sell everything, we will make sure she succeeds. With that, without waiting for Tanaka to respond, Hisashi had already dashed away with determination, completely focused on rallying the clan to support Tsunade and contribute to the Hidden Leaf Village medical system. I'm not even a teenager yet. Tanaka rubbed his temples, struggling to comprehend his teacher's way of thinking. Of course, when it came to Tsunade, he wouldn't deny that he had some thoughts about her. Who wouldn't? But right now, there was a very serious problem. He was only 8 years old. The shinobi world was extremely precocious, making no distinctions based on gender, physicality, or mentality. Yet children still faced limitations. No matter how mature one might be, it was simply impossible for an 8-year-old to do the deed. Unless... well, there were always weird people out there. But he believed he was not like them. No matter how impatient one might be, at the very least, they'd have to wait until after 10 years old. Forget it. Focus on training first. Tanaka shook his head, temporarily setting these thoughts aside. First, he created 2 shadow clones. One of them was assigned to study the swordsmanship scrolls left behind by Orochimaru. The other focused on learning the 8 gates. Compared to using shadow clones for physical training, using them for studying was undoubtedly more efficient. Tanaka knew very well, he wasn't Ajura's reincarnation, nor was he a Jinchuriki, and certainly not an Otsutsuki. If he recklessly trained multiple power systems at the same time using shadow clones, the accumulated fatigue would quickly destroy his body. Reading and studying, however, had no such risks. Well, maybe some headache. As for his real body? Of course, it was time to eat. After attending the meeting and the recent Jonin exam, it was already mealtime. From his perspective, as someone still growing, hardly anything could compare to the importance of eating seeking meat. After all, whether it was molding chakra, practicing gentle fist, developing the Apop fruit abilities, or enhancing the Byakugan's vision, everything relied on seeking meat as nourishment. Without it, with the way he trained, his body would collapse within a year or two. Meanwhile, in the Senju clan compound, which had shrunk to half its original size since the days of Hashirama and Tobirama. Even though Hiruzen had seized half of the land under the pretense of public appropriation, the Senju clan's territory was still enormous. However, with only Tsunade left as its sole member, the once lively clan grounds had become merely desolate. Yet, today, suddenly, the entire place was bustling with activity. Hey, you! You're the Hyūga clan leader, right? Can you explain what the hell is going on here? Tsunade rubbed her temples as she looked at the neatly assembled Hyūga clan members standing before her, 100 pairs of white eyes staring at her in unison. Anyone in her situation would feel caught off guard. She had gone to bed in an empty household, only to wake up and find herself surrounded by 100 Hyūga members. Money. For you. Hisashi's response was straightforward. Clack. As soon as he finished speaking, several Hyūga stepped forward and opened up multiple boxes, each filled to the brim with stacks of cash. Seeing this, Tsunade, who had just lost all her savings at the gambling den a few days ago and accumulated a mountain of debt, instantly perked up. She had been groggy and tired, but now she was wide awake and full of energy. So, this is from that brat? Tsunade exercised incredible self-control to suppress her overwhelming urge to gamble. No, Lady Tsunade. Carrying the dream of the Hyūga must have their own Hokage, Hisashi had assigned himself an S-rank mission. That mission? Convinced Tsunade to marry Tanaka. From now on, she wouldn't just be Tsunade. She would be Hyūga Tsunade. For that reason, he would never allow himself or anyone in the clan to hold Tanaka back. If anyone dared to shatter the Hyūga clan's Hokage dream, he wouldn't hesitate to kill that person. Even if they were a Hyūga themselves. Chapter 80, The Princess, the Prodigy, and the Wingman. Does he really not worry at all that I might just take all his money and hand it over to the casino? Tsunade glanced at the Hyūga ninjas in front of her, before shifting her gaze to the mountain of cash-filled boxes stacked nearby. She hadn't expected Tanaka to be this efficient. She had only just agreed to receive funding and personnel for her medical project, gone to sleep for a bit, and by the time she woke up, both the money and the people had already arrived. And it wasn't installment payments, everything was paid in full. Both the money and the personnel were delivered all at once. As per Tanaka's instructions, he is only responsible for providing you with funds and people. As for how you choose to use them, he has no intention of interfering. Oh, and due to the time constraints, I was only able to bring 1/10 of the clan's cash reserves. If you feel it's still not enough, just let me know, and I will have the clan send word. Before coming here, I already discussed it with Fugaku and Setsuna. As long as we use the Hyūga clan's properties in Hidden Leaf Village as collateral, they are willing to provide us with loans. For the sake of the Hyūga clan's dream of attaining the Hokage seat, Hisashi wasn't just gambling with himself, he was betting the entire Hyūga clan as well. After all, the branch house's ability to take control of the clan and reach their current status was entirely thanks to Tanaka guiding them step by step. If they won this gamble, the Hokage dream would come true, and Tsunade would bear the Hyūga surname. If they lost? Well, no real harm done, it was only the main house's assets at stake. They still had a backup. Besides, as long as Tanaka was still around, the Hyūga clan would never face decline. A single Hanzo had nearly elevated Hidden Rain Village to the level of the 5 great shinobi villages. That was the weight of a ninja standing at the Kage level. Similarly, if Sakamo hadn't chosen to take his own life, regardless of whether he became the 4th Hokage or not, he could have single-handedly elevated the Hotake clan into a legitimate ninja family. Hiss. Tsunade took a small breath, the corners of her lips slightly curling. She had to admit, she was a little touched. Just like how Howard Hughes wasn't obsessed with money but needed it to feel moved, it took a considerable amount of wealth to even begin stirring Tsunade's emotions. Compared to Hughes, moving Tsunade was undoubtedly several times harder. Because Tsunade was a princess of the Senju clan, a princess of the Land of Fire. She loved gambling, which meant she liked money, but at the same time, if she wanted it, she would never be short of gambling funds. So even if Hisashi had emptied half of the Hyūga clan's wealth and handed it to her, her heart would merely ripple like a pebble thrown into a lake. Waves would form, but they would quickly settle. Still, before those waves could come completely, she would inevitably make some unusual decisions. Like at this moment, her interest in the name Tanaka had increased once again. Where is that brat? Tsunade scanned the surroundings, searching through the numerous pairs of Byakugan before her. No, wait, counting Hisashi's, that would be 101 pairs of Byakugan. Yet, she couldn't find Tanaka's. She was a little surprised. Half of the Hyūga clan's wealth was now in her hands, yet he wasn't even here? Tanaka? He had other matters to attend to, so he didn't come. What matters? Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Wait, that brat isn't training the 8 gates, is he? Her expression suddenly became serious. Before leaving, I did see him holding a scroll, Hisashi recalled before replying. That fool. He's throwing his life away. I already told him, if he wants to train in the 8 gates, I must be there to supervise. Tsunade suddenly jumped up from her cushion, visibly agitated. Perhaps he thought it would be troublesome to ask for your help, Lady Tsunade, Hisashi said with a smile, clearly pleased by her reaction. There was no way he could win a fight against Tsunade, but when it came to matters of emotions and relationships, He definitely understood them better than she did. After all, he was a married man. I don't mind the trouble. And how could you not keep him in check? He is young and reckless, that's one thing. But as his teacher, are you also going to act irresponsibly? Tsunade, both anxious and annoyed, scolded Hisashi without holding back. Lady Tsunade, you should know by now. In the Hyūga clan, the one who calls the shots has never been me, but Tanaka. So, how could I possibly control him? Hisashi spread his hands, looking helpless. That actually makes sense. Tsunade thought about it and realized he was right. In other ninja clans, the clan leader had full authority, and there was no such thing as a clan heir. But the Hyūga clan was different. Not only did they have an heir, but the real decision-maker was that heir as well. Besides, Hisashi hesitated, his tone faltering. If you have something to say, hurry up. I still have to go and deal with that brat. Tsunade saw Hisashi hesitating like someone struggling with constipation and immediately lost patience. Apologies, Lady Tsunade. This is just my personal speculation. From what I know about him, he doesn't like troubling others. At the same time, he wouldn't want you to feel like he's using your kindness as leverage. Hidden Leaf Village's #1 wingman, no, Hyūga's #1 wingman, Hisashi, was giving it his all. I don't care what he thinks. Tsunade snorted coldly but didn't forget the important matter at hand. She created a shadow clone to stay at the Senju compound as an instructor, teaching 100 Hyūga ninjas the art of medical ninjutsu. Meanwhile, her real body vanished in an instant using the body flicker jutsu. As your teacher, I've done all I can. Whether the Hyūga clan will have its own Hokage or not, it all depends on you now. Watching Tsunade rush off at full speed, Hisashi silently thought to himself. Whoosh! With Tsunade's speed, even if she were to travel at a normal pace, she could reach the Hyūga compound in under 10 minutes. But now that she was using the body flicker, it took her less than 5 minutes to go from the Senju Estate's entrance to the Hyūga clan's main gates. Identifier, the Hyūga guards at the entrance barely caught sight of a shadow rushing toward them. They instinctively took a defensive stance and were just about to challenge the approaching figure when they suddenly remembered Hisashi's earlier instructions. If you encounter Lady Tsunade, no, if you see someone moving so fast that you can't even make out their figure, just let them through. Recalling Hisashi's repeated warnings, the Hyūga guards were just about to bow in greeting. But before they could even utter something, the figure had already flashed past them, moving at an astonishing speed toward Tanaka's residence. You really have the guts to train in the 8 gates. As soon as Tsunade burst into the room, she saw Tanaka sitting cross-legged in the training hall, holding a scroll in his left hand while forming hand seals with his right. She recognized it at a glance, it was the very same scroll Hiruzen had given Tanaka. Which meant, he had been secretly training in the 8 gates behind her back. Chapter 81, Smoothies and Bloodline Limits. Lady Tsunade, you've come? Tanaka was known for his steadiness. Even when training at the Hyūga clan's residence, he still sent out a shadow clone, using his Byakugan to scan the surroundings from time to time. Because of this, he noticed her arrival even before she reached the training ground. Rather than being startled, he was pleased. After all, he was just about to set off to find her, but she had came to him instead. What's wrong? Do you think I came at a bad time? Tsunade instantly appeared in front of him, first glancing at the scroll in his hands. Sure enough, it was about the 8 gates release formation. Confirming that she hadn't wronged this kid, she reached out like an eagle catching a chick, grabbing Tanaka by the back of his neck. Before he could protest, she pulled him into her chest, forcing him to experience firsthand the unique bloodline limit possessed only by her. Breast release. Tanaka had intended to reply, no, you came at the perfect time, but before he could get the words out, her bloodline ability breast shield, cleansing face jutsu landed on his face. Taking the full brunt of the attack, he could neither speak nor breathe. I'm pretty sure I told you before, you can train in the 8 gates, but only if I'm around. And yet, what do you do? I just told you that a moment ago, and you immediately threw my words out the window. You clearly don't take me seriously. Tsunade was both furious and anxious. As the strongest medical ninja in the ninja world, her understanding of the human body was second to none, even Orochimaru wouldn't dare claim otherwise. So, she knew better than anyone how dangerous the technique was. The 8 gates were natural chakra limiters placed in the body. Unlocking them one by one granted strength dozens of times beyond one's normal capabilities. But where did that chakra come from? It was simple, from the body's physical and spiritual energy. In other words, opening the gates meant forcibly squeezing every last drop of energy from the body and mind, continuously converting it into chakra, until both the body and spirit collapsed entirely. No, I didn't. Tanaka struggled desperately, using both hands and mouth, finally managing to free himself from Tsunade's grasp. Caught red-handed, and you still dare to deny it? Seeing that he had the nerve to argue despite being caught in the act, Tsunade used her bloodline limit again, this time, without even forming seals. Breast shield, continuous cleansing face jutsu. Tanaka's Byakugan grew even whiter, his face looking utterly drained, as if he had been completely exhausted and overworked. Only then did Tsunade release her technique. Huff. 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 Tanaka didn't waste time explaining. He first took several deep breaths, recovering from the torturous bliss he had just endured, then quickly spoke at the fastest speed possible. Lady Tsunade, I wasn't trying to train in the 8 gates. I just suddenly thought of a good method, one that might let me train in this forbidden technique more safely. I was going to test it first, but then I remembered your warnings, so I was just about to come find you. His words came out fast, but they were clear. Really? Tsunade narrowed her eyes, still skeptical. She reached out and released a wave of green medical chakra, letting it seep into Tanaka's body. He knew this was how medical ninja checked the body, so he neither resisted nor avoided it. He really didn't train. Tsunade carefully examined each of his chakra points, from the first gate to the gate of death. After thoroughly checking his chakra pathway and pressure points, she found no signs of any gate having been opened. Only then did she start to believe him. At the same time, now that she had calmed down, she noticed a detail she had previously overlooked. Hisashi had only said that Tanaka held a scroll, he hadn't actually said that the boy was training in it. Thinking about it now, she realized she had let her anxiety cloud her judgment. Something's off. This kid has always been calm and composed, never acting recklessly. And I shouldn't have lost my cool just because he seemed like he was training in the 8 gates. Tsunade frowned slightly, reflecting on her own actions. As a war veteran who had survived the Second Great Ninja War, she was no ordinary woman. After a brief moment of contemplation, she understood. The problem wasn't with Hisashi. Nor was it with Tanaka. The problem was with herself. It's me. I haven't been cared for in too long. It's me. I haven't had anyone to support me in too long. It's me. I haven't cared for anyone in too long. She felt sorrow. After replaying everything in her mind, she finally understood. Ever since Nawaki's death, she had lost all close family in the shinobi world, leaving her heart feeling empty. There was no one left to care about her, and no one for her to care about. That was why the sudden appearance of Tanaka had stirred up a strong but fleeting wave of emotions within her. The situation was further complicated by Hisashi, who brought half of the Hyūga clan's wealth and 100 clansmen to her doorstep. And ultimately, that was why she had lost her composure. Lady Tsunade. At that moment, Tanaka's voice reached her ears. Her slightly dazed eyes refocused, and she saw that he had extended his hand toward her. In his palm was a transparent cup filled with a purple liquid, plump grapes floating inside, and a layer of what looked like milk foam on top. When you're feeling down, have something sweet. It'll make you feel better. Tanaka noticed the sudden sadness in Tsunade's expression. Instead of asking why, he simply handed her a Ninja World version of a grape smoothie topped with whipped cream. Although fancy coffee shops didn't exist in the Ninja World, as the Hyūga heir, he certainly wouldn't deprive himself of life's small comforts. All he had to do was describe the drink in detail, and Natsu, along with the clan's chefs, had perfectly recreated it using local ingredients. Compared to the additive-laden versions from his previous life, the one made by Natsu was pure and authentic, far more delicious. What is this? Tsunade took the cup, finding it visually appealing. As a top-tier medical ninja, she had no need to worry about whether the drink was safe. She took a sip through the straw. It's really good. The lingering sadness on her face brightened instantly. Even the corners of her lips, still wrapped around the straw, curved into a slight smile, a smile so stunning that it could put all flowers to shame. It's called grape smoothie. Tanaka revealed the name of the drink. Who seals drinks inside a scroll? Tsunade glanced at another scroll in his hand while sipping from the straw. It was obvious that this drink had just been taken out from that scroll. Better to be prepared. If I stock up in advance, I'll always have one ready whenever I want a drink. After saying that, Tanaka pulled out a second cup from the scroll. This one had a more strawberry-like color. And this one? Having tasted the grape slush, Tsunade now looked at the new drink in his hand with clear anticipation. It's called strawberry cream. Tanaka took a sip through the straw. As the owner of a space-time portal, frequently traveling between the One Piece and Naruto worlds, it only made sense that his scrolls were packed with food and drinks. Let me try it. Tsunade reached out and took it. I already drank from it. Tanaka quickly pointed out that he had just taken a sip, hoping she would reconsider. Oh? And here I was, not even minding it, yet you're the one fussing? Tsunade shot him a playful, sultry glance before ignoring the fact that he had already used the straw. Instead of switching to a new one, she bit down on the very same straw he had just used and happily started drinking. My strawberry cream. Chapter 82, What the Byakugan was never meant to see. The two of them seemed to have completely forgotten what had just happened. Tanaka did not ask why Tsunade was feeling down, nor did he question why she greeted him with a direct face attack. Tsunade also didn't offer any explanation, nor did she apologize for her cleansing face jutsu and her aggressive close contact move on him. Just like that. The two of them took turns eating, bite by bite, finishing off the strawberry and succulent grapes in their hands before Tsunade finally steered the conversation back to the main topic. Tell me. What method do you plan to use to train the 8 gates? Tsunade put down her empty cup. For someone like Tanaka, who had broken the caged bird and developed a technique surpassing the flying thunder god, she dared not underestimate him in the slightest. If there were a technique that could temporarily strengthen the entire chakra pathway system, making it as tough as iron, would it be able to mitigate the side effects of the 8 gates? Tanaka spoke each word carefully. That was right. The technique he was referring to was actually armament hockey. The advanced application of armament hockey allowed it to be projected outward and penetrate the surface of objects, directly damaging them from the inside. This was the same technique Rayleigh demonstrated to Luffy during his training. Whether it was other materials or human bodies, it could pass through them. Since hockey represents the manifestation of willpower rather than a physical substance, its application should theoretically be limited only by one's control and perception. Just as chakra could be directed to specific parts of the body through precise control, he theorized that hockey could be similarly focused inward with sufficient mastery. The key difference was that while chakra pathways were well documented and traditionally manipulated, directing hockey to internal organs required a level of bodily awareness most users lacked. This could explain a limitation he had observed in even the most powerful hockey users. Despite their mastery, admirals and 4 emperors alike seemed to apply armament hockey only externally, coating limbs, weapons, or their entire bodies. None appeared capable of selectively hardening internal organs like their hearts or lungs. Tanaka suspected this wasn't a limitation of hockey itself, but rather of the user's perception. Without a way to precisely visualize their internal structures, even legendary pirates and marines lacked the sensory awareness needed for such fine internal control. In other words, hockey users themselves couldn't see inside their own bodies. They couldn't directly observe their blood vessels, bones, or organs, so of course, they couldn't precisely channel hockey into a specific organ and then harden it. By comparison, flowing hockey outside the body, wrapping it around the skin and muscles, then hardening it, was far easier. However, the issue of not being able to see inside the body was not a problem for Tanaka at all. The Byakugan could see through everything, not just as simple X-ray vision but at a microscopic level. Forget just organs and bones, the Byakugan can even perceive the chakra pathway system, which was far more delicate than blood vessels, as well as acupoints. And it did so with a full 360-degree field of view. With the Byakugan's vision and insight, he could precisely channel armament hockey into the chakra pathway system and apply the hardening effect before activating the 8 gates. If that still wasn't enough, there was also the Opop fruit, which allowed him to directly manipulate anything within his room, including hockey. This was his plan. And currently, it was the only method that could minimize or even eliminate the damage the 8 gates inflicted on the body. You don't think the 8 gates only damage the pressure points, do you? That the harm only comes from opening the gates? The damage from opening the gates aside, the toll that combat takes on the body is another major burden. The defining characteristic of the 8 gates is being faster and stronger. The speed and punching force that surpass the speed of sound, the fists that shatter mountains, and the kicks that split rivers, these put extreme strain on the muscles, bones, joints, organs, blood vessels, and chakra pathway alike. To put it simply, the damage your body sustains from fighting with the 8 gates is even greater than the damage caused by just opening the gates. Tsunade shook her head. I won't ask you yet how much your technique can strengthen the chakra pathway, I'll just ask you one thing. Skin, muscles, bones, joints, organs, nerves, blood vessels, and chakra pathway. Can your technique simultaneously cover all these systems and make them as tough as iron? As a master of medical ninjutsu, she pinpointed the dangers of the 8 gates with just a few words, as well as the difficulty and feasibility of eliminating or mitigating these risks. It should be possible. Tanaka thought for a moment and then nodded. Is that so? If you can really do that, then we still need to determine the exact level of reinforcement your technique provides. Can it withstand the 8 gates released formation, the first inner gate, the gate of opening, open? 8 gates released formation, the second inner gate, the gate of healing, open? 8 gates released formation, the third inner gate, the gate of life, open? Or even the later gates? Until we figure that out, you are not allowed to train in the 8 gates on your own. Tsunade gave Tanaka a deep look. A genius who could develop a space-time ninjutsu, he was indeed extraordinary. As far as she knew, The Hyūga clan had no technique that could enhance the body to such an extent. In other words, if Tanaka really possessed such a technique, then it meant he had developed it himself. Don't worry, Lady Tsunade. I'm actually very cautious with my life. Besides, with a top-tier medical ninja like you agreeing to be my personal doctor, how could I possibly train the 8 gates recklessly on my own? Seeing Tsunade's serious expression, Tanaka quickly reassured her. He wasn't that reckless. With Tsunade by his side, why would he train the 8 gates blindly on his own? In the vast shinobi world, only Guy and his father had successfully trained in the 8 gates without crippling themselves. It better be that way. Hearing his repeated assurances, Tsunade finally felt at ease. She then glanced at the 2 empty cups in front of her. She decided to consider them as payment for the grape and strawberry drinks. That was what she told herself. Alright, continue your training. I should get back to teaching your clan members medical ninjutsu. After confirming that Tanaka wouldn't secretly train the 8 gates, she stood up to leave. But just as she turned around, she seemed to remember something. Reaching into her pocket, she pulled out a scroll and tossed it behind her toward Tanaka. Take this. If you don't understand something, come ask me again. Although she said that, she still turned back around. Activate your Byakugan. She looked at Tanaka and suddenly said something shocking. Tanaka was slightly surprised and hesitated. Because in the ninja world, there was an unspoken rule: if a Hyūga clan member used the Byakugan on a Kunoichi without permission, it was essentially a declaration of war. Let alone the fact that this Kunoichi was Tsunade. What are you thinking? Did I ask you to see through my clothes? I'm asking you to look at my body's chakra pathway system and chakra flow. Tsunade said impatiently. Although she was still unmarried and single, she was a veteran of the Second Great Ninja War and one of the Sannin. As a medical ninja, she wouldn't blush or get embarrassed over something like this. The fact that the Byakugan has X-ray vision is well known in the shinobi world. Logically, the Hyūga clan shouldn't be able to make any friends in the village. But in reality, whether male or female, many ninjas are willing to befriend Hyūga clan members. Do you know why? Tsunade gave Tanaka a teasing smile. Why? Tanaka genuinely didn't know. His knowledge of the Byakugan was limited to combat, training, and scouting. He had never thought about using it for peeping. You really don't know? Not bad. Seeing that Tanaka wasn't pretending, Tsunade was even more satisfied with the young ninja before her. She pointed at her chest weapon, which she used for her bloodline limit techniques, then casually dropped an earth-shattering statement. Alright, activate your Byakugan. But don't look at my body, just see through my clothes. Chapter 83, Train, Eat, Sleep, Destroy. Seeing that Tsunade wasn't joking, Tanaka no longer hesitated and directly activated his Byakugan. Following her instructions, he carefully controlled the intensity of his ocular power. He didn't look through her entire body, only through her clothing. In his Byakugan's vision, her clothes had indeed disappeared, but 2 private areas were each covered by objects resembling nipple covers and a thong. Seeing this, Tanaka felt a strange sensation. Is it just an illusion, or do these clothes seem like they're part of the body itself? After looking at them for a while, do you even start to feel like these 2 parts of the body naturally have nipple covers and a thong? These are actually clothes made from a special material similar to chakra metal. In the shinobi world, especially in Hidden Leaf Village, every kunoichi basically owns at least one set. Seeing Tanaka's expression, Tsunade was certain he had never used his Byakugan to see through a woman's clothing before. At the very least, he had never done it to a kunoichi. This realization made her impression of him rise significantly. Wearing clothes made from this material still allows your Byakugan to see through the body, seeing the chakra pathway, pressure points, and chakra flow. But in the Byakugan's vision, the body parts covered by this material appear as if they fused with it. This is also the fundamental reason why your Hyūga clan wasn't wiped out by my grandfather and great-uncle back in the day. Hearing this, Tanaka couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat, feeling a deep sense of relief. Thankfully, the shinobi world had this chakra-infused material for underwear. Otherwise, his chance to be born into this life might have been erased by Hashirama and Tobirama. Alright, move your eyes away from there and focus on the chakra. Tsunade pointed at Tanaka's Byakugan, then gestured toward her chest before raising her fist. This is... Tanaka widened his Byakugan. In his vision, her chakra flowed along her chakra pathway, gathering in her fist. Then, bang. She threw a punch downward. A violent force accompanied her fist, striking the training ground. Boom. With a thunderous explosion, resembling a cannon blast, cracks spread out from the point of impact, covering most of the training ground. From a distance, it looked as if the earth itself had flipped over. The power of this punch was easily on par with an A-rank jutsu. No wonder Tsunade rarely used medical ninjutsu, ganjutsu, or other techniques in battle. She simply relied on her chakra-enhanced strength and devastating kicks. A single punch had the force of an A-rank jutsu. Who needed jutsu when you could just punch? She didn't even need to bother with hand seals. I see. So this is chakra-enhanced strength. Tanaka's gaze sharpened. Since Tsunade had deliberately slowed down each movement, he could clearly observe every detail. At the moment her fist struck the ground, the chakra condensed in her hand was released, detonating like an explosive shell and creating a ground-shattering effect. If I remember correctly, you once said you were interested in strong fist techniques. Apart from the 8 gates, the pinnacle of strong fist techniques is the Senju clan's chakra-enhanced strength. If you master this and combine it with gentle fist, now that would be interesting. After painting a grand vision of merging chakra-enhanced strength with gentle fist, Tsunade waved her hand at Tanaka and walked away without looking back. As one of the Sannin, she had her own matters to attend to. Even if she wasn't managing the medical ninja training system, her daily training was essential. After all, this version of Tsunade was not the disheartened, blood-phobic one from the original timeline. More importantly, during today's meeting at the Hokage building, Tanaka's words had ignited her obsession with the Yin seal. Chakra-enhanced strength combined with gentle fist. Tanaka murmured, his eyes flickering. With his Byakugan, he had fully analyzed the mechanics of Tsunade's chakra-enhanced strength. This made him realize, her decision to teach him wasn't made on a whim but was a carefully considered choice. After all, she didn't have the Byakugan, she couldn't see through things, nor did she practice gentle fist. So before concluding that gentle fist and chakra-enhanced strength could complement each other, even someone like Tsunade, a master of both medical ninjutsu and taijutsu, must have spent considerable time thinking it through, perhaps even testing the idea. That was why, while teaching him chakra-enhanced strength, she also pointed out how it could be combined with gentle fist. Like a true mentor, she had paved the path for his future in taijutsu. Looks like I have another taijutsu style to learn. Tanaka thought to himself. Taijutsu or rather swordsmanship combined with Haki and Devil Fruit abilities. Chakra-enhanced strength and gentle fist, combined with Haki and Devil Fruit abilities. These were the two paths he had chosen to follow. They were also, in his mind, the best way to integrate the power systems of Naruto and One Piece into a cohesive fighting style. On top of that, he planned to use the 8 gates and Haki as his trump card. If he could master these combinations, he believed he would possess the power to stand at the pinnacle of both worlds. After obtaining Tsunade's training method for chakra-enhanced strength and planning his growth path, he threw himself into intense training. Mornings were spent molding chakra, and practicing the Appop Fruit's abilities as well as chakra control. Afternoons were dedicated to taijutsu and swordsmanship. In between, he indulged in 4 large meals made from sea king meat. Day after day, he remained within the Hyūga compound, paying no attention to the uproar he had caused in Hidden Lee village after instantly defeating the Anbu commander. For 20 straight days, he lived a simple 4-point routine: train, eat, sleep, spar with Hyūga Jonin. A complete shut-in. For most ninjas, 20 days of training wouldn't yield significant results. This was especially true at the age of 8, when the body hadn't yet entered its prime development phase. But Tanaka was different. For him, 20 days was enough to bring about a qualitative transformation. His progress in the chakra system alone could only be described as advancing at an astonishing pace. With the foundation of the Hyūga clan, Tsunade's daily guidance, and the nourishment of sea king meat, his chakra reserves, taijutsu, swordsmanship, and ninjutsu had all undergone breakthrough improvements compared to when he took the Jonin exam. As for Ganjutsu, he hadn't focused much on training it, but he had put significant effort into breaking through it. Moreover, due to his intensive training, high-energy diet, and growing mental strength, his power had been increasing daily. With the Byakugan, while he couldn't see through and reflect Ganjutsu like the Sharingan, he could at least see through illusions. After all, even Awa, who only had a transplanted Byakugan, was able to see through the Ganjutsu cast by Danzō using a Mangekyo Sharingan, which belonged to none other than Shizui. Let alone Tanaka, an authentic member of the Hyūga clan. It's time to set off for the One Piece world. Tanaka made his final preparations. Today was the day he was scheduled to meet Rosinante on Minion Island. Even though it was just a simple meeting, his upbringing in the Hyūga clan had instilled in him the habit of being fully prepared at all times, ready to enter battle at a moment's notice. So before every use of the Voidwalker's Gate to travel to the One Piece world, he prepared everything. Weapons, food, medicine, water, and various survival and combat essentials. All sealed in scrolls, carried with him at all times, ready for anything. Chapter 84, The Cypher Pal 9 Agent Trap. A massive warship, as imposing as a ferocious sea beast, could be seen over the eastern horizon of the ocean. Report. Rear Admiral Rosinante, we are approximately 15 kilometers away from Minion Island. There are currently no signs of anyone near the beach on the eastern side of the island. The marine lookout lowered his binoculars and quickly stepped onto the deck, standing before Rosinante, who was clad in a heavy coat. Rosinante was not merely reinstated to his original position after completing his undercover mission, he was promoted 3 ranks higher. Back when he was an undercover spy, he had only been a marine commander. Now, he had risen to the rank of rear admiral. Had he not consumed the cum-cum fruit, which was rather underwhelming, he might not have been just a rear admiral but a vice admiral instead. Commodore Khalifa, fire a shot towards the shore. If Tanaka is on the island, he will definitely hear the cannon blast. By then, he should be able to guess that I've arrived. Upon hearing this, Rosinante turned excitedly to a blonde female officer beside him and issued the order. Due to his many years as a spy, he didn't have many friends in the marine. Aside from Sengoku and Tsuru, his only close friends were Law and Tanaka, who had saved his life multiple times on Minion Island. After such a long separation and with their reunion imminent, he was naturally excited. So, instead of using a Dendenmushi to contact Tanaka, he chose a different method, firing a cannon at the island as a signal. Understood. Dressed in a military uniform that was almost too tight for her well-fitted frame, Khalifa turned and walked towards 2 marine officers. Captain Jabra. Lieutenant Bruno. Prepare a cannon immediately. Rear Admiral Rosinante has ordered a shot fired toward the shore. Khalifa spoke with strict professionalism, as if she didn't know the 2 men at all. In reality, she was discreetly passing on intelligence. So, he's finally showing up? Jabra, sporting a long black ponytail, responded casually, but when his gaze fell on Minion Island, there was a menacing glint in his eyes. Don't underestimate him. According to the intel from the Marine, the target of this mission not only possesses the powers of the Apop fruit but also has mastery over some unique abilities, such as teleportation techniques. After the Marines left, Bruno lowered his voice. His hair, styled into 2 distinctive horn-like shapes, gave him an imposing presence even as he spoke quietly. You guys are so timid. You're Cypher Pol 9 agent, for crying out loud. A brat who's only had the Apop fruit for about a month is enough to make you all cower? Is this what Lucci has been teaching you? With 2 white horns protruding from his head and a mop of pink hair, Huzu casually munched on something while struggling to push a cannon forward. At the same time, he spoke in a mocking tone, making sure that Jabra, Blueno, and Khalifa could all hear him loud and clear. This isn't cowardice. It's about respecting the opponent. It's precisely because we have this level of caution that we've maintained a 100% mission success rate to this day. By the way, there's something I probably don't need to remind you of, right? Who's who, you are currently a convict. You lost the rubber fruit and were imprisoned. If you fail to capture the Apop fruit user this time, what do you think will happen to you? Khalifa adjusted her gold-rimmed glasses, her gaze discreetly scanning the deck while she spoke in a tone that seemed polite yet carried sting. Since when do you have the right to lecture me? Whose face darkened instantly upon hearing this. Having the rubber fruit being stolen by pirates during transport was the biggest stain on his record as a Cypher Pol 9 agent. Had the world government not suddenly issued a mission to capture the Apop fruit user? Had the user's whereabouts not surfaced in the North Blue? Had he not coincidentally been imprisoned in the North Blue? Then he wouldn't even have the chance to atone for his sins. He would have already been executed by the world government. That was why he despised anyone bringing up the subject of the rubber fruit in his presence. Still don't get it? Then I guess it falls on me to spell it out for you. If we fail to capture the boy named Tanaka, the worst that happens to us is losing our perfect mission completion record. We'll still be Cypher Pol 9 agent. But you. Khalifa remained composed, her features barely betraying any reaction as she coldly and methodically put him in his place. Whose face flushed red with anger, yet he was left speechless. Khalifa, focus on the mission. Jabra, inwardly delighted, couldn't help but smirk. He had disliked Husu for a long time. Cypher Pol 9 agent had always been known for its ruthless efficiency, but internally, they maintained strong unity, except for Husu. With his foul temper and sharp tongue, he had made himself unpopular within the unit. However, there was no denying his talent, his strength rivaled even Lucci's. Now that he was a convict atoning for his failures, a direct confrontation could jeopardize the mission. Worse, it might endanger Khalifa, so Jabra decided to step in to diffuse the tension. As he did, he exchanged a quick glance with Bruno. Let's get back to the Apop fruit user. Personally, I think we should ensure he never gets the chance to use his devil fruit powers. From the intel we've gathered, the Apop fruit is far too overpowered. Not only can it teleport people within a certain range instantly, but it can also slice through anything. Iron Body probably won't be able to withstand its cutting power. Catching Jabra's signal, Bruno immediately shifted the conversation back to strategy. I suggest we remain hidden near Rosinant until the target reveals himself and gets close." As he spoke, Jabra lit the cannon fuse. Boom. The deck-shaking roar of the cannon was deafening. A pitch-black cannonball launched from its muzzle, piercing the sky with a shrill whistle. It streaked across the ocean, hurtling toward the eastern shoreline of Minion Island. Boom. Flames erupted, thick smoke billowed, and sand exploded into the air, leaving a deep crater in the ground. The peaceful silence of Minion Island was shattered by a single, unexpected cannon shot. "We take him down in one move." Jabra grinned menacingly, his sharp-toothed smirk resembling a wolf locking onto its prey, sending chills down the spines of those who witnessed it. Though Hueco was irritated, he understood the stakes. If he failed this mission, he would be executed by the world government. This was his one chance to clear his name and reclaim his status in Cypher Pol 9 agent. Given the choice between being a soldier or a fugitive, who wouldn't prefer the former? Using the Void Walker's Gate, Tanaka had traveled from the Naruto world to Minion Island. He was already heading toward the meeting spot he had arranged with Rosinant, the eastern coastline of Minion Island. As Jabra's cannonball landed, the thunderous explosion reverberated through the air. Even though the impact site was several kilometers away, the deafening roar still reached Tanaka's ears loud and clear. Chapter 85, The Ninja's Trap. It should be artillery shells. Tanaka formed a hand seal with his left hand, veins bulging at the corners of his eyes. As soon as he activated his Byakugan, the surrounding scenery rapidly retreated like a fast-forwarded slideshow, flickering continuously. When his vision finally stabilized, a beach ravaged by artillery shells came into view. After staying in the Hyūga clan for 20 days, his Byakugan had grown even sharper than before. Telescopic and X-ray vision. Everything within 4 kilometers was laid bare before him. It really is artillery. Seeing the shell-torn beach, he willed his chakra to flow through his chakra path down to his feet. The moment his soles touched the ground, his body lightened instantly, and he leaped forward. However, just before he exited the forest and stepped onto the beach, he abruptly halted his movement, landing on a tree instead. Concealing himself, he turned his gaze toward the distant sea. Because power systems differ, so do worldviews. In the Naruto world, ever since chakra came into existence, wars had raged for over 1,000 years, growing in scale and intensity as time went on. At first, it was just individual ninja assassinating each other. Then, during the Warring States period, ninja clans fought to the death over missions. By the time the ninja villages were established, things became even more terrifying. Espionage, infiltration, assassination, poison, no method was off limits. All kinds of intelligence warfare emerged endlessly. On the surface, armies clashed, ninjutsu rained down, and there were even godlike beings wielding powers akin to nuclear weapons. In such a world, he was raised by the Hyūga clan. Caution, no, prudence was ingrained in his very bones. Faced with any situation, he would first scout, then analyze, and only after obtaining absolute intelligence would he act. Even though he possessed a space-time portal and held unquestionable authority and power within the Hyūga clan, he never became reckless or arrogant. Even after crossing over to the One Piece world, he arrived at Minion Island. This was a place he was quite familiar with. Despite this, he still adhered to the shinobi 3-step rule: scouting, investigation, and analysis. Only then would he meet. He had no choice. In the Naruto world, unless you were the reincarnation of Asura, losing caution even once meant disaster, whether you were Obito with the power of the Sage of Six Paths, Madara with the same, or even Kaguya herself. If fate decided you were going to fail, you would fail. They're here. After a brief wait in the forest, once the warship approaching Minion Island fully entered his Byakugan's vision range, he immediately expanded his field of view to the maximum. His sight stretched across the 4-kilometer distance, locking onto the warship. From the top brass, like Rosinant wearing his justice coat and looking all serious, down to the patrolling marine soldiers, Tanaka scrutinized every face, carefully examining each one. He even used his X-ray vision to scan their bodies, checking for traces of haki. He didn't find anything unusual among the marines on board. But unexpectedly, he did spot 4 familiar faces, ones that shouldn't be dressed as marines. Jabra, Khalifa, Blueno, and who is this guy? Tanaka's gaze locked onto the 4 individuals aboard the warship, carefully taking in their attire. They were clearly Cypher Pol 9 agent, yet they had changed into marine uniforms and were now aboard this warship. Most importantly, judging by the complete lack of eye contact, verbal exchanges, or body language between Rosinant and these Cypher Pol 9 agent members, it was clear that even Rosinant had no idea that Cypher Pol 9 agents were among his ranks. This just got interesting. What was Tanaka? A Jonin. In the One Piece world, the intelligence agency Cypher Pol, under the world government, operated as spies. But in his eyes, Their tricks were nothing impressive. Putting aside raw strength, even a random tune-in from a ninja clan, no, even a Gain-in would have superior assassination, surveillance, reconnaissance, and analytical skills compared to Cypher Pol 9 agents' best agents. With just a quick glance, he had already deduced the purpose behind these 4 Cypher Pol 9 agent members being aboard the warship. It seems that as a user of the Apop fruit, I'm a highly sought-after prize, whether to Doflamingo or the world government. But the question is, what role is the Marine playing in this? Are they completely unaware? Pretending not to know? Or are they actively involved? A cold smirk curled on Tanaka's lips. With Rosinant's fate altered and his return to Marine headquarters, information about Tanaka would inevitably reach the Marines. This was true even if significant details were withheld. And since the Marine was one of the 3 major institutions under the world government, what the Marines knew, the world government knew. Unlike Law in the original timeline, who became a fugitive after eating the Apop fruit, Tanaka's situation was vastly different. Law had constantly moved across the vast North Blue, remaining difficult to track. Tanaka, however, had exposed his whereabouts to the world government due to his agreement to reunite with Rosinant on Minion Island. It looks like I'll have to adjust my plans. But before that, I'll give Cypher Pol 9 agent a little shock, Tanaka muttered to himself. Regardless of the Marine's exact role in this operation, the moment Cypher Pol 9 agent set foot on this warship, his position became irreversibly opposed to the world government and Marine headquarters. With this shift in identity and allegiance, many of his original plans for this world now needed adjustments. As the warship docked at Minion Island, Rosinant was the first to disembark, stepping onto the shore. Aside from a portion of Marines remaining on the warship, rows of soldiers followed closely behind him. Who's Who, Califa, Blueno, and Jabra were no exception. Like the other Marines, they carried rifles and wore standard-issue swords at their waists, silently following Rosinant. Still not here? After reaching the designated meeting point, Rosinant scanned his surroundings but saw no trace of Tanaka. He wasn't worried. Instead, he simply stood in place and pulled a denden mushi from his pocket. But just as he was about to call Tanaka, he paused. From the distant edge of the forest, a familiar figure suddenly emerged, stepping into view. Almost at the same time, the disguised Cypher Pol 9 agents all turned their gazes toward the figure that had just appeared. Chapter 86, 3 Fingers, 3 Wounds Target Confirmed. The boy looks like the drawing from the intelligence report. Califa adjusted her glasses by pressing against the bridge of her nose. After giving Tanaka a quick glance, she retracted her gaze to avoid drawing his attention. The same went for Huzu, Jabra, and Blueno. However, while they too looked away, their eyes slightly lowered as they saw Tanaka appear and begin walking toward Rosinant. Beneath their military uniforms, their muscles tensed up. They concealed their sharp aura to avoid alerting the target while remaining poised to strike. Tanaka, over here. The moment Rosinant saw Tanaka, he didn't wait in place. Instead, he took the initiative to walk forward and greet him. Long time no see, Rosinant. Seeing the excitement and joy on Rosinant's face, along with the favorability score hovering close to 90 above his head, Tanaka couldn't help but smile. Speaking of which, Rosinant and Law were the first people he had met and built the best relationships within both the Naruto and One Piece worlds. Even compared to his teacher, their favorability scores were only slightly behind. It wasn't until later, when he overthrew the Hyūga main house and seized power, that Natsu and Hisashi's favorability score completely pulled ahead, eventually reaching the threshold needed for the Voidwalker's Gate. Breaking past 90 points. After a long separation, seeing Rosinant again made Tanaka genuinely happy. He had even brought him gifts, which added to his delight. A month of travel is quite a while. But it's fine. I'm now a rear admiral, and I have my own warship, so I can come see you anytime. Rosinant deliberately tugged at his justice coat in front of Tanaka. Since he got promoted, he had to flaunt it in front of him. You do look quite like a proper rear admiral in that coat. By the way, where is he? Tanaka gave him some face by offering a compliment before asking about Law. Ever since you mentioned hockey, he's been obsessed with it. So after I returned to headquarters and resumed my duties, I sent him to the Marine Academy. After updating him on Law's whereabouts, Rosinant suddenly narrowed his eyes, scanning Tanaka from head to toe. He even gestured with his hand. Wait a second. What's going on here? I remember when we first met, you were just a bit taller than my knee. Now you're almost at my waistline. He scrutinized him for a while before realizing that Tanaka had grown significantly taller since their last encounter. Height-wise. Though Tanaka hadn't quite reached 1.7 meters yet, he was already around 1.65 meters. A considerable growth spurt. Somehow, when you say it, even though I've gotten taller, I don't feel happy at all. Tanaka smiled helplessly. Rosinant's words might have sounded harsh, but in reality, he was already being quite tactful. The reason he phrased it that way was simple. Rosinant himself stood at a towering 2.93 meters. "Don't worry, I'll make you happy right now." Rosinant grinned, reached into the pocket of his justice coat, and pulled out a brown paper envelope. "Look. Guess what this is?" He waved the file folder in front of Tanaka. "Hockey training methods." Tanaka's eyes immediately lit up when he saw the brown paper envelope in Rosinant's hand, snapping him out of his frustration over being teased about his height. "That's right. Inside are training methods for armament hockey and observation hockey, as well as some hockey techniques." Rosinant had a proud expression on his face. "Thanks, Rosie." Upon hearing this, Tanaka's smile grew so wide that even Miyak's wouldn't be able to cut it down. "No need for thanks. Both Law and I owe you our lives. If it weren't for you personally pulling us out of Doflamingo's birdcage, we would have been dead at his hands a month ago." Speaking of this life-saving favor, Rosinant's voice was filled with deep gratitude. As he spoke, he handed over the brown paper envelope containing the hockey training methods. Seeing this, Tanaka didn't hesitate and reached out to take the envelope. "Move." 10 meters behind Rosinant, who had been watching Tanaka with a concealed but vicious gaze. The moment he saw the boy's attention fully locked onto the envelope, his slightly lowered eyelids suddenly lifted. His expression remained unchanged, yet the aura he gave off was entirely different. If he had been like a resting lion before, now he was a lion baring its fangs, ready to strike. Even before Hueco could give the order, the other Cypher Pol 9 agent members needed no verbal communication. With just a single exchanged glance, they pounced like predators, flashing out from the surrounding marine personnel. For the 3 agents, who had mastered the Marine 6 styles, a distance of 30 meters was nothing. They could close that gap in a single step. Their speed was so fast that even an arrow released from a bow couldn't compare. The only fitting analogy was that of a bullet fired from a chamber. Whoosh! By the time Rosinant heard a strange sound, 3 figures had already brushed past him. In the blink of an eye, Hueco, Jabra, and Blueno all extended their index fingers. Just as Tanaka was about to take the brown envelope from Rosinant's hands, 3 fingers, sharp as bullets, shot toward him. Bang! 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 3 sounds echoed like bullets sinking into flesh. Tanaka's right chest, abdomen, and right leg were penetrated by their attacks. "Hockey, huh? Try learning it in your next life." Hueco's cold, merciless eyes locked onto Tanaka's face, which had twisted into shock and horror due to the sudden assassination. You all." Faced with this sudden betrayal, watching his savior being ambushed by the very marine soldiers he had brought, Rosinant's eyes widened in disbelief. He couldn't understand why the subordinates he had brought with him had suddenly turned on Tanaka. However, it took him less than a second to recognize the martial arts techniques they had used, and in that instant, he realized their true identities. Chapter 87, The Advantage of Paranoia. Cypher Pol. Rosinant's expression changed dramatically. He truly hadn't expected that Cypher Pol agents would disguise themselves as marine personnel and hide aboard their own warship. As for their objective, it was now self-evident. The Opop fruit. Mission accomplished. Ignoring the furious Rosinant, Jabra spoke indifferently after piercing Tanaka's right leg with his finger pistol. "Tanaka, you are now captured." Bruno, using his left index finger, stabbed Tanaka's abdomen with a finger pistol, while his right hand activated the door fruit, opening an air door to trap Tanaka inside. Clearly, they had already devised a plan to capture him alive before making their move. Knowing how troublesome the Opop fruit could be, their best strategy was to heavily injure Tanaka in one strike and then imprison him inside the alternate space created by the door fruit. This way, even a spatial manipulation devil fruit user would be trapped like a caged bird, unable to escape. However, just as Tanaka was about to be sealed away in that eerie, green-hued alternate space, his previously panicked expression suddenly shifted. A mocking smile crept across his lips. "Are you sure you've really captured me?" The moment he finished speaking, boom. The body of Tanaka, which had been pierced by Jabra and Bruno's finger pistol, abruptly exploded into a cloud of white smoke, leaving behind 10 burning explosive tags that drifted to the ground. The Tanaka struck by Cypher Pol 9 agents' attacks was nothing more than a shadow clone. Not only that, at the exact moment the shadow clone dissipated into white smoke, Rosinant, who had been standing to the side in shock and fury, also vanished. "This is bad." Hueco's previously smug expression instantly darkened as he instinctively took a step backward. "A clone?" Jabra and Bruno, both looking as if they'd seen a ghost, reacted just as quickly as Hueco, retreating without hesitation. But as they withdrew, the explosive tags fully ignited. Boom! A blinding explosion erupted, sending violent and scorching flames outward, engulfing Jabra and the others. Just because the Naruto world had abundant fire-based techniques didn't mean explosive tags were weak. During the Chunin exams, when Naruto faced Gaara in his semi-tailed beast form, a single kunai wrapped with an explosive tag managed to blast away half of Gaara's transformation. Now, 10 explosive tags detonated simultaneously. Even in the One Piece world, where people had insane durability, and even though Cypher Pal 9 agent were masters of martial arts, taking an explosion like that at close range was devastating. Sure enough, as the flame soared, shockwaves tore through the beach, and waves of searing heat surged outward. Several battered figures were sent flying from the explosion, resembling cannonballs shooting through the air. Among them, Bruno, who was the slowest to react, suffered the worst. His clothes were in tatters, his body was severely burned, and his face was charred beyond recognition. Although he wasn't instantly killed or crippled by the explosive tags, his entire body was severely burned, leaving him on the verge of collapse. As for Jabra, his overall strength was several times greater than Bruno's. When faced with the explosive tags, he didn't have enough time to escape the explosion's range. However, just before the blast engulfed him, he instinctively activated Iron Body. Even Califa, the weakest among Cypher Pal 9 agent, could withstand gunfire and cannon attacks once she used Iron Body. Let alone Jabra, one of Cypher Pal 9 agent's top fighters. As the only Cypher Pal 9 agent member capable of freely using other Marine 6 styles while in Iron Body mode, he possessed extraordinary defensive capabilities. Even when caught off guard and taking a direct hit from explosive tags, he was merely blasted away. His clothes were burned off, and only a trickle of blood escaped his lips. His health bar had dropped, but only slightly. As for Huzu, there was even less need to mention him. He dared to claim his power was on par with Rob Lucci, so he obviously had the skills to back it up. When the explosive tags detonated, he relied solely on Iron Body to completely tank the damage. At this moment, though he had been blown away, looking disheveled and covered in dust, in reality, his health bar remained intact. Damn it. What the hell is going on with this guy? It was just a clone? Huzu, who had just been sent flying, looked furious. Before attempting to capture Tanaka, he had been aware that Tanaka possessed a clone technique nearly indistinguishable from the real body. But he never imagined that, after reuniting with Rosinante and even receiving hockey training methods from him, the one present wasn't even his real body, but just a clone. Even so, before taking action, Huzu had carefully observed Tanaka for some time. Only after failing to detect any flaws did he decide to make his move. And in the end, he got hit with explosive tags point blank. Something's wrong. That guy was obviously prepared in advance. Did he already know we were coming for him? Jabra, also blown away by the explosion, didn't focus on his injuries. Instead, his mind raced, analyzing Tanaka's reactions. Both the clone and the explosive tags, these weren't improvised tricks but carefully planned, premeditated defenses. And who was the target of this setup? The answer was obvious. Splash. Just as Jabra was deep in thought, the sand beneath his feet suddenly gave way. Two hands shot out from the ground, grabbed his ankles, and yanked him downward with tremendous force. What? He felt his footing vanish as his body plummeted uncontrollably. By the time he realized what was happening, half of his body was already buried in the sand, and he was still sinking. Behind Jabra, a swift, shadowy figure emerged from the sand, leaping into the air before landing directly behind him. Not good. His pupil started to the corner of his eyes, locking on to Tanaka, who had already taken an offensive stance behind him. His heartbeat pounded violently in his chest. However, as a martial arts expert, his reflexes were lightning fast. In that instant, he twisted his spine, his upper body contorting unnaturally despite his lower half being trapped in the sand. This remarkable flexibility was only possible with a superhuman physique of a Marine 6 Styles master. At the same time, he clenched his hands into fists, his muscles swelling instantly. Then, his fists followed his body's rotation, launching two cannonball-like punches at Tanaka, each accompanied by a piercing sonic boom. Iron Body, Heavy Step Wolf. Chapter 88, Twin Lion Fists vs Iron Body. Facing Jabra's Iron Body, Tanaka advanced, clenching his fists. At that moment, a surge of powerful chakra exploded from his hands, morphing into the shape of two ferocious lion heads that wrapped around his fists. Immediately after, he lunged forward, not dodging or evading. With the superior insight of the Byakugan, he met Jabra's fist head-on. Fist against fist. Boom. The moment their vastly different-sized fists collided, a wave of force erupted from the impact, sending sand in all directions, spreading 10 meters out. By all logic, with Jabra's strength and the hardness of his iron body, even if Guy were here, without opening the 8 gates, his relentless strong fist attacks might not even break through Jabra's defense. But Tanaka was different. He wasn't using strong fist, he was using gentle fist. And it wasn't just any gentle fist, it was gentle step twin lion fists. The moment his chakra-coated lion fists made contact, the chakra surged into his opponent's body, consuming and shutting down nerve system like two lions pouncing into a herd of sheep, tearing them apart. And what set Tanaka apart from other members of the Hyūga clan, was that he had fused Tsunada's chakra-enhanced strength technique into his gentle step twin lion fists. Every strike was both a gentle fist and a chakra-enhanced strength attack. Gentle fist, destroying the opponent from within. Chakra-enhanced strength, shattering their bones from the outside. Thus, when his fists smashed like two rampaging lions into Jabra's fists, the smug confidence on Jabra's face instantly froze. Boom. At the moment of impact, a thunderous explosion rang out, shaking the ground beneath them. Jabra felt as if his fists had been struck by cannonballs, not just any cannonballs, but ones hurled by Garp himself. A powerful force surged through him, shaking his body violently where he stood. His arms, originally locked in combat, were flung wide open beyond his control. But that wasn't all. The moment his fists collided with Tanaka's, he felt two strange forces seep past his iron body defense, burrowing into his body like an invading army. Then, inside him, chaos erupted. Even in the One Piece world, where people trained in haki rather than chakra, the human body still had the same vital pressure points and energy pathways. And even if it didn't, that didn't matter. Gentle Fist chakra didn't just attack vital pressure points. It destroyed acupoints, veins, organs, everything. Splurt. A gut-wrenching pain tore through his insides. Jabra opened his mouth to scream, but what came out was a spray of blood, mixed with chunks of flesh. Clearly, the chakra invasion had wreaked havoc on his internal organs. Iron body could harden his exterior, making his skin like iron. But blood vessels, nerves and internal organs? They couldn't turn to steel. 8 trigrams 64 palms. Fist to fist. Power against power. With Jabra's arms forcefully knocked aside and his chest left wide open, Tanaka momentarily paused before stepping forward, and with a sudden shift in stance, a massive 8 trigram symbol unfurled beneath his feet. Locking Jabra within its bounds, Tanaka's palms shot forward like a violent storm, creating a blur of afterimages, raining down like a hurricane. Boom. 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 Tanaka's hands struck like a barrage of cannon fire, landing 12 precise palm strikes on Jabra in an instant. With the Byakugan's X-ray vision, each of his strikes hit a crucial acupuncture point on Jabra's body with pinpoint accuracy. His chakra surged into Jabra like an indomitable chakra blade, piercing through the acupoints. At the same time, every strike that landed on Jabra's body caused the chakra in Tanaka's hands to explode like ignited gunpowder, unleashing an overwhelming force strong enough to shatter mountains and leave visible craters on his body. This devastating combination of external brute force and internal devastation, like a concealed needle hidden in cotton, struck Jabra 64 times in total. During this process, the color drained from his face at a speed visible to the naked eye. His body, twisted from the sheer impact, was forcibly straightened out by the palm strikes. Both his chest and back were left covered in deep, horrifying handprint-shaped craters. Boom. The moment Tanaka finished his assault, Jabra was blasted into the air, shooting across the battlefield like an arrow released from its bowstring. Splurt. Midair, his eyes rolled back, his mouth spewing blood as he let out a painful scream. Crash. After soaring dozens of meters, he slammed into the ground. The sheer impact split the thick sandy terrain apart, creating dozens of deep cracks that spread outwards like a spiderweb. A massive cloud of dust and sand erupted from the crash site, forming a 10-meter pillar that billowed outward in all directions. Not far away, Califa, who had been hiding among the Marines as a backup, had originally planned to strike at the perfect moment. But the explosions from explosive tags had thrown the battlefield into utter chaos. Unlike Tanaka, she did not possess 360-degree vision. By the time her eyes finally locked onto him, he had already completed his 64 palms combo on Jabra. Thus, she could only watch helplessly as Jabra was sent flying like a cannonball, crashing into the ground. Her eyes widened in pure shock, nearly gasping aloud. In her line of sight, the over 2-meter-tall Jabra, who had always prided himself on his strength, now looked like he had been trampled by a stampeding herd of elephants. His chest and back were covered in deep craters, his once solid frame now appearing flattened. Lying motionless on the sand, he looked more like a human-shaped discus than a man. It was clear, even for a Cypher Pol 9 agent member as physically powerful as Jabra, that iron body offered little protection against Tanaka's assault. Even with it activated, under Tanaka's 64 palms technique, the defensive stance crumbled. Iron body was nothing more than a piece of metal hammered into a flat sheet. Bruno. Jabra. Watching this unfold, Who's who had been blasted away by the explosive tags earlier, contorted his face in rage. He wasn't like Uchi, who saw Cypher Pol 9 agent as mere tools of the mission. The reason he reacted so violently to Jabra and Bruno's defeat wasn't out of companionship but because if this mission failed, he wouldn't just lose his place in Cypher Pol 9 agent, he wouldn't even be allowed to live. He would be hunted down and killed by the world government. In a single exchange, 2 Cypher Pol 9 agent members had fallen. That meant, besides the hidden Khalifa, he was the only one left to face Tanaka directly. Tempest Kick. Despite his boiling fury, who was still a Cypher Pol 9 agent prodigy, before he became a convict, he had maintained the discipline of an assassin. The moment he stabilized his stance and saw that Jabra and Bruno were critically injured, his right leg shot up instantly. Harnessing immense leg strength, he kicked the air, generating a razor-sharp vacuum slash that carved a deep rift through the sand, and shot straight toward Tanaka's back. Chapter 89, Room for Error, There is None. Tanaka had just completed a full set of 64 palms on Jabra. He was in a state where his old strength had been exhausted, and new strength had yet to be generated. Facing Tempest Kick, he truly had no time to dodge. He could only use his Byakugan to watch helplessly as the attack approached, slicing toward his back. Crack. Accompanied by the sharp sound of a blade cutting into flesh, whose Tempest Kick, like a crescent moon, struck Tanaka's back solidly, splitting his body in two. Tanaka. Rosinante, who had been teleported 30 meters away by Tanaka using his Aha fruit to escape the exploding tags, saw his savior being cut in half, and the blood drained from his face. Thud. His knees gave way, and he collapsed to the ground. However, just as Rosinante was drowning in despair, the Tanaka who had been sliced in two suddenly burst into a cloud of white mist. Thud. With a heavy object hitting the ground, where Tanaka had been standing, only a severed wooden log remained. Watching as Tanaka dissolved into mist, leaving only a log behind, Rosinante was stunned. Who was stunned? Even Khalifa, who had yet to recover from the battle, was stunned. What did it mean to put on a show? This was it. A display of ninja techniques from the shinobi world left even the Cypher Pol 9 agent, including who, utterly bewildered. And Rosinante, who could only watch from a distance, was equally dumbfounded. Compared to being instantly defeated due to an absolute power difference, the way Tanaka used a strange technique and tactical maneuvers to fight was both shocking and excruciating for Cypher Pol 9 agent. You're the last one left. Come on. Let's end this. Tanaka, who had just used the substitution jutsu to thoroughly baffle who, slowly rose from the distant sandy ground. After standing firm, he raised his chin slightly and beckoned to who. Fucker. You're just a brat. Don't get too cocky. Who was enraged and panicked. If the mission to capture the boy failed, he would be unable to atone for his sins and would surely be eliminated by the world government. Moonwalk. At this thought, he took a step forward and soared into the air like a raging storm, shooting dozens of meters high. He then opened his mouth, revealing his sharp teeth, like a ferocious tiger preparing to devour its prey. Fang pistol. In the instant he bit down, the air around him rippled violently before releasing a massive air projectile in the shape of a saber-toothed tiger's jaws. It tore through the sky, descending upon Tanaka with overwhelming force. Tanaka saw this and smiled. No one saw it, but he had already expanded his room, encompassing both himself and who was stepping through the air. Shambles. At the very moment when he was about to be devoured by the massive air projectile shaped like razor-sharp fangs, both he and Hueco vanished, only to reappear together a second later. However, in that brief instant of disappearance and reappearance, their positions had drastically changed. Tanaka was now in midair, standing at the very spot where Hueco had been using moonwalk to step on thin air. Meanwhile, Hueco had landed on the ground, right where Tanaka had been standing just moments ago. And then, boom! A deafening explosion erupted. The massive air projectile, like the jaws of a colossal beast, engulfed Hueco, who had been teleported into its path by Tanaka's fruit ability. Although Hueco, like Jabra, could maintain iron body while using other Marine 6 styles techniques, the problem was, he hadn't activated it just now. So in that instant of forced position swap, he was directly hit by his own Fang pistol attack at point-blank range. His neck. His chest. It was as if he had been bitten by a saber-toothed tiger, its fangs tearing through his flesh. Skin ripped open. Blood gushed out. He dropped to one knee. You don't develop such a terrifying battle strategy without experiencing thousands of life-and-death fights. How could a kid who's barely 10 years old have such vast combat experience? Khalifa turned pale as she witnessed Hueco's miserable state. Cold sweat ran down her back, soaking her white shirt and revealing glimpses of her skin. Her desire to take action was completely extinguished. Ever since Tanaka detonated the explosive tags, she had been lying in wait, ready to strike at the first opening, like a predator hidden in the shadow, waiting for its prey to reveal a weakness before pouncing. But unfortunately, the boy's relentless chain of tactics had left all of Cypher Pol 9 agent utterly bewildered. and with the space-swapping ability of his Apop fruit, she couldn't find even the slightest opportunity to launch a sneak attack. At this moment, no matter how much she refused to admit it, she knew in her heart, this mission to capture the boy had failed. Rather than staying and getting killed, it was better to continue concealing her presence. Whether or not she would get another chance to assassinate Tanaka later was uncertain, but at the very least, she could try to rescue Jabra and the others. At worst, she could protect herself and report all of Tanaka's strange abilities and his cunning, deceitful battle tactics to the world government. Bullshit. 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 Damned Apop fruit power. Who's who, kneeling on the ground, roared hysterically. But his excessive movement tugged at his wounds, causing fresh blood to spurt out instantly, soaking his entire body. His marine uniform was dyed red, and the sand beneath him turned scarlet. He had always had a hot temper. From the very beginning of the fight, he had been completely led around by Tanaka, falling into one trap after another. How could he not mentally collapse? Furthermore, compared to ninjas from the Naruto world, the powerhouses of the One Piece world were undeniably strong in terms of sheer fighting spirit and durability. But when it came to mental resilience, most of them were lacking. They had no sense of tactics, acted on instinct, and often lost their cool in battle, rushing in headfirst without thinking. Just like Who's Who at this very moment. Chapter 90, Not Dirty Enough. You're absolutely right. Damn Apop fruit. Facing Who's Who's broken composure and his trash talk, Tanaka smiled indifferently, completely unfazed. Hearing this, Who's Who went completely berserk. Instant transmission. Whoosh. With a piercing sonic boom, he instantly flashed behind Tanaka. He extended his index fingers from both hands, launching a flurry of piercing attacks, like dozens of guns locked onto Tanaka, all firing at once. A dense barrage of finger strikes completely enveloped Tanaka's body, leaving no space for him to dodge. After suffering once from spatial displacement, even though Who's Who was enraged, he wasn't reckless enough to use long-range attacks like Tempest Kick again. After all, if he did, Tanaka could simply repeat his trick, swapping positions, and making him take his own attack to the face. PFFT. 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 Under the relentless assault of Finger Pistol, Tanaka was punctured with over a dozen holes in his back, resembling a beehive. Ha. Ha ha ha. As long as I'm fast enough to prevent him from using his abilities, I can win. His face, originally red with anger, now carried a triumphant smile. His earlier outburst was half real, half an act. It was all to deceive Tanaka. A setup for instant transmission and Finger Pistol. PFFT. Suddenly, Tanaka, who had been pierced through, exploded into a cloud of white mist. A clone again? The unexpected turn of events left Who's Who in shock. Why was he so confident just now? Because he believed that Tanaka had used his Apop fruit power. Therefore, he was convinced that the Tanaka in his sight was the real one, not a clone. But what was the result? A whole barrage of Finger Pistol, only to end up stabbing a puff of mist. Whoosh. Sizzle. At that instant, from Who's Who's blind spot behind him, a sword materialized out of thin air. The blade crackled with visible electricity. Then, without anyone holding the hilt, the electrified sword shot forward like lightning, stabbing directly into his spine. PFFT. His body trembled violently, his eyes widened, and his gaze immediately lowered. What he saw was a segment of the electric blade protruding from his abdomen. He tried to move, but with his spine severed, his brain could no longer command his body. He wanted to struggle, but the high-frequency, high-voltage electricity spreading from the sword rendered him completely paralyzed. You. Foo. Fucker. His lips quivered. A flood of curses rushed to his tongue, ready to be spat out. Standing 20 meters behind him, Tanaka raised his left hand, palm up, and lightly flicked two fingers. Under his remote control using the Apop fruit, the Kusanagi sword that had stabbed into Who's Who's back immediately made a swift horizontal slash. Crack. Who's Who was cut into several pieces, blood spilling everywhere. Clang. After finishing, he reached out and grabbed the hovering Kusanagi sword. Like a bird returning to its nest, the sword flashed through the air, circling around him like a silver serpent before sliding back into its sheath. Watching from the sidelines, Calliope felt her brain freeze. She couldn't understand. Why was Tanaka's fighting style this dirty? After consecutively defeating two Cypher Pol 9 agent members, he finally stepped forward to challenge Who's Who one-on-one, only for it to turn out to be just a clone. And that was just the beginning. The real Tanaka had been hiding in the shadows, secretly using his Apop fruit powers to teleport an electrified sword behind Who's Who, landing a chilling, lethal strike. As a bystander, Calliope saw the full picture more clearly than anyone else. She understood just how terrifying Tanaka truly was. As a Cypher Pol 9 agent, she felt more horrified than anyone else. Tanaka. That. Have you Always fought like this? Now that the battle was over, Rosinante, who had been teleported away earlier by Tanaka's Apop fruit, finally walked back over. Even though he and Tanaka were extremely close, he still couldn't help but feel that his fighting style was incredibly dirty. Deception. More deception. And even more deception. And was the Tanaka who controlled the sword from afar even the real one? Maybe more deception. 3 Cypher Pal 9 agents had been fooled from start to finish. This made Rosinante question reality for a moment. Was Cypher Pal 9 agent trying to ambush Tanaka? Or was Tanaka the one who had been setting up an ambush for Cypher Pal 9 agent all along? Cypher Pal 9 agent was an organization infamous in the pirate world for their assassinations and ruthless methods. And yet, when it came to Who's Who, Blue Ano, and Jabra, they looked downright naive compared to Tanaka. Is there a problem? Hearing Rosinante's words, Tanaka looked genuinely puzzled. What was a battle? A fight where both sides put their lives on the line, unless it was a spar. And if your life was at stake, shouldn't you use every possible advantage to ensure victory? Because not winning meant dying or worse. Honestly, Tanaka hadn't even awakened his Apop fruit yet. If he had, Cypher Pal 9 agent wouldn't have even needed to see him to die, they would have already been sliced apart by a 400-meter-long Kusanagi sword. And no problem at all. Seeing how calm and composed Tanaka was, completely unaware of how dirty his tactics were, Rosinante could only shake his head. As far as he was concerned, as long as Tanaka was safe, it didn't matter how dirty his fighting style was. It was certainly better than standing by and watching Cypher Pal 9 agent capture him. Rosinante, you watched me fight just now. Did you notice any areas where I could improve? Tanaka pondered for a moment before asking Rosinante. He had always believed that whether it was ninjutsu, ganjutsu taijutsu, or battle tactics, one should constantly improve through training and real combat. Standing still in progress or worse, regressing, would only lead to becoming obsolete. Why did Kaguya lose to her weaker sons back then? First, because of sealing techniques. Quite broken. Second, because she was utterly outmatched in strategy. 1,000 years later, why did she fall the same way a second time? Because she had been sealed away for a millennium, never improving, and then got defeated by the same old combination of Sage of Six Paths sealing techniques and Team 7's tactics. An outsider saw more clearly than those involved. Since Rosinante had witnessed everything firsthand, Tanaka believed that if he had any flaws or weaknesses, Rosinante would have been able to spot them. Rosinante. Khalifa. All the Marines. You think you aren't dirty enough? You think your tactics aren't sinister enough? And you still want to improve them further? Are you really just a kid? At that moment, they finally understood why Tanaka, despite his young age, had already mastered such an underhanded and ruthless fighting style. A person who constantly reflected on whether his tactics were dirty enough, a person who tirelessly thought about how to refine and perfect his fighting style. How could he not be underhanded? Chapter 91, Only the liar knows how innocent you are actually, you're already very strong. You really don't have to be this perfect? Even though the climate of Minion Island was freezing cold, Rosinante was still wiping away cold sweat. Tanaka simply shook his head at those words, offering no further explanation. After all, the backgrounds of their worlds were different. The highest level of war that Rosinante had ever encountered in his life was the battle against the Don Quixote pirates. Unlike in the Naruto world, where in just 50 years, the 5 great villages had waged 3 major wars that engulfed the entire ninja world. Not to mention the 4th Great Ninja War, which escalated to the level of what could only be described as a nuclear apocalypse. If you didn't improve, others would, and then you would just end up getting beaten. Even someone as powerful as Kaguya was sealed inside the moon for 1,000 years due to a single mistake, let alone him. Rosinante, are you still over there chatting and laughing with him? Hurry up and help. Who's Who had been sliced into multiple pieces by Tanaka's devil fruit ability, was still alive. The portion of his body connected to his brain was now furiously yelling at Rosinante. He was already in this condition. And yet, Rosinante was standing there, chatting and laughing with Tanaka. How could he not be enraged? Help? Help who? Faced with Who's Who's furious ranting, Rosinante looked bewildered, as if he didn't understand what the man was talking about. Of course, help me. Are you planning to help him instead? We're on the same side. Seeing this, Who's Who became even more infuriated. On the same side with you? No way. You're Cypher Pal 9 agent. Rosinante took a step back, widening the distance between himself and Who's Who. You bastard. You're in the Marine, and I'm in Cypher Pal 9 agent. We both serve directly under the world government. If we're not on the same side, are you saying you'd rather side with him? Who's Who was already mentally collapsing from dealing with Tanaka. Now, with Rosinante turning against him, it was the final straw that broke his sanity. What else? Have you forgotten why I even came to this island in the first place? Rosinante spoke confidently, completely unshaken. He used to be a celestial dragon. Now, he was the adoptive son of the fleet admiral. What was there to be afraid of? Besides, Cypher Pol 9 agent had hidden themselves aboard his ship and launched an attack on Tanaka without his consent, which had already greatly angered him. Who instantly realized that Rosinante was determined to stand by Tanaka. So, he had no choice but to turn to the marine soldiers that Rosinante had brought with him. Rosinante might be confused, but are you all going to be confused too? The person standing in front of you is a criminal that the world government has explicitly ordered to be captured. If you refuse to help, that's the same as committing a crime. I don't think I need to explain what happens when you offend the world government, do I? As soon as he said this, the dozens of marine soldiers behind Rosinante immediately turned pale. As marine soldiers from marine headquarters, they were even more aware than the average person of how terrifying the world government was, and what the consequences of offending them would be. At best, they'd be imprisoned and executed. At worst, their entire families would be jailed or enslaved. Rear Admiral Rosinante. Many marine soldiers turned their gazes toward Rosinante. Their meaning was clear. Anyone captured by Cypher Pol 9 agent is, without a doubt, a wanted criminal. If we really stand by and do nothing, the world government will hold us accountable later. Seeing the shift in the situation, Khalifa's eyes flickered with a subtle smile as she quietly fanned the flames. Initially, she thought that failing the mission was already an irreversible fact. But now, whose strategy might just have an unexpected effect. Tanaka glanced at Khalifa, a meaningful smile appearing on his face. But in the end, he didn't make a move. Instead, he crossed his arms and looked on with amusement at the marine in front of him, as well as Rosinante. Phew. As soon as Tanaka's gaze moved away from her, Khalifa let out a long sigh of relief. Just a single glance had already made her break out in a cold sweat. She had even prepared herself to make a move at any moment. Thankfully, he didn't act. What is the duty of a marine soldier? To obey orders and fight all evil on the seas in the name of justice. If the government issues an order, we will risk our lives to carry it out. But are they really Cypher Pol 9 agent? Is Tanaka truly a criminal? Rosinante stepped forward unhurriedly, stabilizing the marine soldiers' morale with just a few words. No matter what world it is, those who undertake undercover missions may not always be the strongest, but they are certainly intelligent. In a fight, he might not be able to beat Cypher Pol 9 agent, but in terms of wits, he definitely wouldn't lose to who's who. If we're not Cypher Pol 9 agent, then what are we? Who's who was furious. How the hell am I supposed to know which pirate crew sent you as a spy? You secretly infiltrated our ship and attacked my friend without reason. I haven't even questioned you yet, and now you're accusing me? Until your identity is verified by our superiors, you are criminals. Rosinante let out a cold snort. Upon hearing this, the marine soldiers also found it reasonable. Indeed, while who claimed to be Cypher Pol 9 agent, how could he prove it? And more importantly, they hadn't received any orders from their superiors. If who was truly Cypher Pol 9 agent, then fine. But if he was an imposter, that would be a huge problem. You all should know that I came here to bring Tanaka the training method for hockey. And this training method came from Marine headquarters. If the government had really sent Cypher Pol 9 agent to capture him, then why would headquarters allow me to bring this hockey training method to him? Rosinante held up the leather-bound document. Hearing this, the marine soldiers who had been hesitant suddenly saw the logic in his words. That was right. If Tanaka were truly a wanted criminal, as who claimed, then why would Marine headquarters hand over a hockey training method to Rosinante and have him deliver it all the way here? If he really is a criminal, then why hasn't headquarters issued an order for us to assist Cypher Pol 9 agent in capturing him? If you are really Cypher Pol 9 agent, then why did you sneak onto our ship in secret? A sneaky rat, first pretending to be a marine soldier, then pretending to be Cypher Pol. What's next? Are you going to claim you're a celestial dragon? Rosinante's words, both probing and attacking, left who questioning his own identity. Watching this scene unfold, Tanaka couldn't help but shake his head and chuckle. No doubt about it, only the one falsely accusing you knew just how innocent you really were. Chapter 92, Marine 6 Styles doesn't make the agent. The marine soldiers, who had been intimidated by who at first, calmed down after being reassured by Rosinante. They were no longer swayed by his words. Damn it. Khalifa observed the changes in the expressions of all the marine soldiers and was left with only one thought: this was their last chance to cause trouble for Tanaka, and Rosinante had completely ruined it. Wait. I know Marine 6 Styles. You saw it. Who grasped onto the flaw in Rosinante's argument. Marine 6 Styles? Hearing this, the marine soldiers all turned to look at Rosinante. Doflamingo is quite talented, and he also knows a few Marine 6 styles techniques. Then why is he a pirate and not Cypher Pol 9 agent? Rosinante remained calm as he provided an example. With those words, the Marine soldiers all found his reasoning logical. The Marine 6 styles, like hockey, were rare in the Four Blues and the first half of the Grand Line, but once you reached the New World, they were as common as roadside cabbages. You could pull any random Marine officer from the New World, and they would likely know armament hockey. Similarly, you could grab any pirate from that region, and they would probably know at least 1 or 2 Marine 6 styles techniques. Fucking liar. Who turned red with anger. At that moment, he finally understood. Why would Rosinante, a Marine, be siding with Tanaka, a criminal wanted by the world government? Because these two guys were equally devious. Shut him up. Rosinante said expressionlessly. Of course, he knew how wrong Who was, but precisely because he knew Who's real identity, he had to prevent him from proving that he was actually Cypher Pol 9 agent. As long as he stuck to this one point, then went back and let Sengoku handle the situation, there would be no problems at all. After all, he really didn't know anything, right? The Marine headquarters didn't notify him. The world government didn't issue an order. Who knew if Who was just an imposter running around pretending to be Cypher Pol 9 agent? Yes. Feeling that they had almost been tricked by Who, several burly Marines immediately stepped forward, pulled out some random cloths from who knows where, and gagged him. Sorry about this. I wanted us to have a nice reunion, but instead, I brought you this mess. At least you're okay. Now that the situation was settled, Rosinante finally apologized to Tanaka. It's not your fault. Tanaka shook his head. He understood that world government orders weren't something a mere rear admiral like Rosinante could refuse. Besides, Rosinante was clearly aware of the situation. Even after realizing that Who really was Cypher Pol 9 agent, he still stood firmly by Tanaka's side and ruthlessly framed him. Going against the world government's orders like this took courage, and Rosinante had definitely earned his favorability points. Of course, even if he had turned against him or lost control of the situation, it wouldn't have mattered. From his perspective, even if the number of Marines here doubled, he could still take them all down with a single slash. After all, his room had already encompassed all the Marines, including Calamity. Here, take this. You never know when you'll run into another fake Cypher Pol 9 agent while traveling. Better to be prepared. Rosinante patted the paper bag containing the hockey training method against Tanaka's chest, speaking with a hidden meaning in his words. I know. Tanaka naturally understood what he was implying. Because of the op fruit, he had already come under the watchful eye of the world government. This time, they had sent Cypher Pol 9 agent after him. Next time, it could be Cypher Pol 0 agent, or even an admiral. That made the hockey training method in his hands all the more valuable. Only by mastering armament hockey and observation hockey would he have the strength to fight back when facing powerful world government agents or marine admirals in the future. By the way, Rosinante continued, Instructor Zephyr was quite interested in your deal, but he recently took a training ship out to sea and won't be returning to headquarters anytime soon. So, you might want to look for someone else. Rosinante subtly hinted at the dangers of pursuing that route. Got it. Tanaka nodded slightly at his words. This time, the world government had kept things quiet to maintain secrecy. Since he was still young, they likely didn't see him as too much of a threat and figured sending Cypher Pol 9 agent under Who's command would be enough to capture him. That's why they didn't make a big spectacle or issue a bounty, so as not to scare him off. But now that Cypher Pol 9 agent had failed, it was only a matter of time before he was officially wanted. Once the world government or marine headquarters issued a bounty, Zephyr, who had agreed to teach him Marine 6 styles, would likely change his mind instantly. If he showed up before Zephyr at that point, the retired admiral would turn into a Marine officer tasked with capturing him. Even without Rosinante's warning, Tanaka had already given up on dealing with Zephyr. Besides, he had found a better option. At that thought, his gaze shifted to the 3 heavily wounded Cypher Pol 9 agents lying on the ground. Marine 6 styles, life return. Weren't these 3 living, breathing sources of those very techniques? Rear Admiral Rosinante, Calamity spoke up. Even though their identities are unclear, they dared to impersonate Cypher Pol 9 agent and use Marine 6 styles. That alone suggests they have a powerful backer behind them. I believe we should imprison them first and send them back to headquarters to await further orders. Calamity had been secretly watching Tanaka's every move. The moment she saw his eyes linger on the injured Who's, Blueno, and Jabra, her heart tightened. She immediately sensed the danger her comrades were in. She was far more cautious and perceptive than Who's. Seeing that Rosinante had full control of the situation and that Tanaka was terrifyingly powerful, her only goal now was to protect Jabra and the others. Rosinante furrowed his brow slightly at her words but didn't respond right away. He knew very well that if he took Jabra and the others back, the world government's orders would likely arrive before they even reached Marine headquarters. And once it was confirmed that Hueco and the others were really Cypher Pol 9 agent, he would no longer have control over the situation aboard the warship. Not good. Califa's heart sank. Earlier, she had suspected that Rosinante was truly unaware of their real identities. But now, seeing his reaction, it was clear, he knew exactly who Blueno, Jabra, and Hueco were. However, clang. Before Califa could think further or take any action, a sword suddenly extended from behind her neck. The cold steel touched her skin, and a chilling sensation sent an uncontrollable shudder through her body. You've been exposed. Chapter 93, A Nice Day to Die, Califa. Califa, is today a nice day to die? Tanaka appeared behind Califa at some point, pressing his back against hers. His right hand gripped the Kusanagi sword, bringing the blade around to the front of Califa, resting it against her neck. You. Upon hearing this, her pupils contracted sharply, and waves of shock surged through her heart. This guy. He knows my name? Yes. Not just her identity, but her actual name. Even Rosinante had only confirmed that Hueco and the others were Cypher Pol 9 agent, but he didn't know their names. But the boy? Not only did he precisely pick her out from the crowd, but he also called her name out loud. What disturbed her even more was that, despite Tanaka suddenly appearing and holding a blade to her throat, the surrounding Marines seemed completely unaware that he had just exposed her name. Put down the sword. What do you think you're doing to her? Faced with this unexpected situation, the nearby Marines stepped back while raising their rifles. Clearly, they had no idea that Califa was also Cypher Pol 9 agent. To them, she was just another Marine officer. Due to the Marines' male-to-female ratio being overwhelmingly skewed, female officers often received more favoritism. Additionally, Califa, as a Cypher Pol 9 agent, had fully mastered espionage skills. Even though she hadn't been on this warship for long, unlike the foul-mouthed and unpopular Hueco, she had built an excellent reputation among the crew. For 90% of the Marines aboard, she was practically a goddess. A comrade in arms, and someone they secretly admired. But let's be honest, they just wanted to get laid. Now, seeing her being held at knife point by Tanaka, of course, their reactions were intense. Lower your weapons. Rosinante's first thought upon witnessing this scene was, another Cypher Pol 9 agent member. But, Rear Admiral Rosinante. The surrounding Marines hesitated, worried and reluctant. However, military hierarchy was absolute. Just moments ago, due to Hueco's incitement, several Marines had nearly been swayed. Now, fearing Rosinante might hold a grudge, they dared not act rashly. Reluctantly, they lowered their guns. But they still surrounded Tanaka tightly, ensuring he had no way out. Can you give me a reason? As Rosinante spoke, he shot Tanaka a meaningful glance. Even though all the Marines combined wouldn't last a single strike against Tanaka, the Cypher Pol 9 agent matter needed to be concealed for as long as possible. Moreover, Rosinante himself was still a Marine. When dealing with Cypher Pol 9 agent, he could stand firmly by Tanaka's side without hesitation. But when it came to his fellow Marines, he preferred a peaceful resolution. So, the best approach was to falsely accuse another one, just like with Hueco, Jabra, and Blueno. They're all in on it. Tanaka immediately understood Rosinante's intent. He had learned all those ninjutsu, taijutsu, sword techniques, eaten the apop fruit, and trained in hockey, all for one purpose, to make people calmly listen to him. If he could resolve this without using his blade, he wouldn't mind using his words instead. After all, it would only cost him a little saliva. Besides, since Rosinante was willing to stand by him unconditionally, Tanaka didn't want to put his friend in a difficult position between the Marine and himself. What? No way. Impossible. She is clearly a Marine officer. How could she be the same as those imposters, those fake Cypher Pol 9 agents? Upon hearing Tanaka's words, the Marines were in absolute uproar. Their reaction was even more intense than when Hueco had claimed to be Cypher Pol 9 agent and threatened them. How do you prove it? During the previous battle over the apop fruit, Rosinante had already witnessed Tanaka's abilities multiple times. So, he was certain that since Tanaka dared to make such a statement, he must have a way to ensure Califa wouldn't be wrongfully accused. For starters, she's been speaking in defense of these people the entire time. But let's make it simpler. Shoot one of those two guys. Halfway through his sentence, he suddenly shifted his tone. Bang. Rosinante immediately caught on to Tanaka's train of thought. Without a moment's hesitation, he drew a pistol from his waist and aimed it at Blueno, who was already severely injured from the explosive tag. I am an apop fruit user. You know this, Califa. So, I have at least 10,000 ways to make Blueno and Jabra experience every possible form of torture. Be it dismemberment, beheading, cutting them in half, skinning, burning, or boiling, I can still keep them alive and kicking afterward. Tanaka activated his room, isolating all sound so that only Califa could hear his words. When it came to Cypher Pal 9 agent, especially Cypher Pal 9 agent members who had came to capture him, he had no reason to show mercy. Just like in the Naruto world, where no ninja's hands were clean of innocent blood, in the One Piece world, there wasn't a single Cypher Pal 9 agent who hadn't bathed in blood. Take, for example, what happened after Roger's death, when the world government scoured the globe for the pregnant Portgas de Rouge. During that time, Cypher Pal agents had indirectly or directly caused the deaths of countless pregnant women and newborns. So, when facing when facing Cypher Pal 9 agent, he could be utterly ruthless. Will you surrender on your own, or shall I help you do it? Tanaka's voice wasn't loud, nor was his tone heavy. In fact, there was even a trace of gentleness in it. But to Califa, his words were more terrifying than the whispers of a devil. Stop. Don't kill them. I'm one of them. On one side, she could confess and receive a swift end. On the other, she could deny it, and let Jabra and Blueno endure unimaginable torture. She chose the former without hesitation. She was outmatched, she had no excuse. There was no point in being stubborn and making both her comrades and herself suffer needlessly. What? No way. You're a Marine. How could this be? Hearing Califa admit it with her own mouth, many of the Marines felt their hearts shatter. Alright, talk. Who exactly are you people? Why are you impersonating Cypher Pal 9 agent and infiltrating the Marine to go after Tanaka? Rosinant watched the scene unfold, feeling no surprise at all. He was all too familiar with Tanaka's abilities. Even someone as powerful as Doflamingo had been played like a puppet by him. So, what chance did a mere Cypher Pal 9 agent have? Now that Califa had confessed, things became much easier. As long as they made her admit she wasn't Cypher Pal 9 agent, even if the matter escalated to the world government, Rosinant would remain blameless. He stole the Opop fruit from the Don Quixote pirates. Tell me, why wouldn't I come after him? Califa's lips trembled slightly as she spoke with difficulty. She felt like she had been completely outplayed. For the first time in her life, she was falsely accused of not being Cypher Pal 9 agent, and was now helping her own accuser prove she wasn't Cypher Pal 9 agent. And if that wasn't bad enough, she was even helping Tanaka pin all the blame on Doflamingo. Chapter 94, Califa's glass reflection. Damn it. So you guys were sent by Doflamingo. If he could send Virgo to infiltrate the Marine, then of course he could send you as well. Rosinant's eyes lit up the moment he heard an opportunity to falsely accuse his own brother. He immediately seized the chance and coordinated with Tanaka, successfully shifting all the blame onto Doflamingo, sealing it so tightly that there was no way out. Just like Virgo. She's one of Doflamingo's people. With Rosinant bringing up Virgo as an example who was a notorious case of undercover infiltration, plus Califa's own admission, the Marine soldiers who had previously surrounded Tanaka looked visibly shaken. One by one, they backed off, opening a path. Not long ago, thanks to Tanaka's maneuvering, Virgo's true identity had already been exposed, causing a massive uproar within Marine headquarters. Given that precedent, blaming Doflamingo again seemed only natural, and the soldiers instinctively believed it. You all, return to the ship immediately. I will personally report this matter to Fleet Admiral Sengoku. First, it was Virgo, and now there are 4 more. Doflamingo is completely lawless. As long as it involved taking down his brother, Rosinant spared no effort. He had no choice. Doflamingo had personally executed their father right in front of him. For the Marine, he had to make Doflamingo suffer, even if Cypher Pal 9 agent had to take the blame. Yes, Rear Admiral Rosinant. Having been repeatedly deceived and played with, the Marine soldiers who once saw Califa as a goddess, now walked away with heavy steps toward the warship, their illusions shattered. I think the truly lawless ones aren't Doflamingo, but you too. Tanaka. Rosinant. As the Marine troops withdrew, Califa finally dropped her act. Her icy expression was as sharp as a blade as she coldly rebuked them. With the world government's blade at my throat, was I supposed to just sit there and wait for death? Tanaka let out a cold laugh. That's what you get for overestimating yourself and trying to get your hands on the Opop fruit. So what you're saying is, if the world government ever put a blade to your throat, you'd just sit there and wait to die? Tanaka wasn't angry. Something like that would never happen to me. Califa sneered. She had no idea that, in the future, after the Anai's lobby incident, the world government would indeed attempt to wipe out Cypher Pal 9 agent. And back then, they too had chosen to resist. Then tell me, why don't any of you know how to use hockey? Why is it that even the common Marines in the New World know how to use armament hockey, yet none of you in Cypher Pal 9 agent do? Tanaka asked with great interest. You, Califa's expression remained cold, but behind her glasses, her eyes flickered with uncertainty. Compared to the other members of Cypher Pol 9 Agent, she paid more attention to the subtle details that others might overlook. For instance, hockey. Logically speaking, an organization like Cypher Pol 9 Agent should have access to hockey training methods. Even Lucci didn't know how to use hockey before joining Cypher Pol 0 Agent. Because you are nothing more than a blade. A blade specifically used by the world government to carry out dirty and disgraceful deeds. And once a blade has been used, it is naturally meant to be broken. But if the blade is too hard, too sharp, then breaking it becomes dangerous. It might even injure the wielder. Tanaka moved in front of Califa, shifting from a back-to-back stance to face-to-face. Their eyes locked. Say whatever you want. In the end, winners rule and losers fall. Since I failed my mission and ended up in your hands, death is my only outcome. After meeting Tanaka's gaze for a brief moment, Califa turned her head away. She knew that what Tanaka said might be true, but at this point, it no longer mattered. The moment she failed her mission and was captured by the enemy, her future was already gone. What do you plan to do with them? Rosinante asked. You should head back first, Rosinante. We won't be able to keep this hidden for long. When the truth comes out, remember to cut ties with me completely. Just say that you were fooled by me, that you saw through my deception too late. Tanaka didn't directly answer but instead gave Rosinante a warning. What do you take me for? I'm done with this. This marine uniform, I just won't wear it anymore. Rosinante was a bit displeased. If he was willing to risk his life for Law, he was naturally willing to do the same for Tanaka, whom he considered a friend. But Law is still in the Marine Academy. Tanaka shook his head. In this pirate world, he only had two real friends. That was why he didn't want to see Rosinante or Law get caught up in his troubles. The moment Law was mentioned, Rosinante fell silent. That was when he suddenly realized, he was no longer the same who had once been all alone. Now, he had a foster father in Sengoku, a boy he saw as a son-in-law, and a close friend in Tanaka. Keeping this marine identity might not be a bad thing after all. At least until Law grows up, this marine uniform will serve as protection, for both you and him, Tanaka advised Rosinante not to act recklessly. But what about you? This time Cypher Pol 9 Agent failed, next time, it could be Cypher Pol 0 Agent. Or even an admiral. Rosinante's face was filled with unconcealed worry. It's fine. Back then, I was all alone. I didn't even have the op-op fruit, yet I could still fight. Don't worry, the world government can't do anything to me. Tanaka was completely confident. For one, the pirate world was vast, with endless seas. Even a massive power like the world government would struggle to track him down. And even if they did find him, with the ability to traverse dimensions, he could come and go as he pleased. From the very start, he had never been in a losing position. Besides, this time he had obtained hockey training methods, and even the Marine 6 styles techniques were within his grasp. In the future, as long as he grew stronger, he would undoubtedly stand at the top of the world. By then, it was uncertain whether the world government would be hunting him down, or if he would be hunting them. On the other hand, if Rosinante left the Marines, he would lose its protection. Not even Sengoku would be able to shield him or Law. Just like Garp. Unless Ace chose to become a Marine, even a hero like Garp was powerless to protect him. Chapter 95, 99% fear, 1% loyalty. Rosinante left. After all, the longer he stayed on Minion Island, the greater the risk of exposure. Before the world government learned the truth and reacted, he had to return to Marine headquarters and first report to Sengoku truthfully to solidify this false case. Only after the truth was inevitably exposed could he distance himself from the matter. This way, Law, who was at the Marine Academy, wouldn't be implicated. If his father wasn't Sengoku, he would have already called Law and fled overnight. His rich and dramatic life had long taught him that in the pirate world, background and affiliations matter. Without connections, whether as a pirate or a Marine, it would be difficult to take even a single step. As Rosinante disappeared from view, Tanaka flicked his hand, using his devil fruit ability to remove the cloth stuffed in Husu's mouth. You win. Moments ago, when his mouth was blocked, Husu had watched everything unfold. Now, he no longer had his previous aggression. His opponent was a kid, yet his tactics, scheming, strategy, and strength completely overwhelmed him. Though he was still cursing Tanaka in his heart, he had to admit defeat. Losing to such a monster was nothing to be ashamed of. Big Mom had been a monster as well when she was a kid. She was still a monster. Kill me if you want, do as you please. In the future, Husu would become one of the Tobirapo of the Beast's pirates, and he did have some backbone. You immediately ask for death the moment you speak? That really puts me in a tough spot. I originally wanted to give you a chance to live. But now, it seems I can only send you on your way and give that chance to your 3 comrades instead." Hearing this, Tanaka sighed lightly and reached for the Kusanagi sword on his back. "Wait. What did you just say? Chance to live?" Who's face changed, and his composure from earlier vanished instantly. Clearly, he did have some courage, but not much. As for loyalty to the world government, he had none at all. Ever since he failed his mission to transport the gum fruit and had it stolen by red-haired Shanks, the world government had thrown him into prison. If not for the principle of waste not, and the fact that Tanaka happened to be in the North Blue and found a use for Cypher Pol 9 agent's combat strength, he would have been dead long ago. He knew this well. He was already a criminal with no chance of redemption, and he had failed his mission. If he went back, he wouldn't just be imprisoned or awaiting execution, he would be executed on the spot. He had always planned to escape if the mission failed, so of course, he wouldn't be loyal to the world government. Depends on whether you cooperate. Tanaka was unsurprised. Even in a world full of heroes and kings, people like Whitebeard and Roger, who could laugh in the face of death, were extremely rare exceptions. 99% of people were just as greedy and fearful of death as Buggy the Clown, only without his lucky conqueror's hockey. "What do you want me to do?" He adjusted his mindset. "I don't want you to do anything for me. I just want the techniques, you know." "No problem." Who agreed without hesitation. The techniques he knew might be considered divine skills in the 4 Blues and the first half of the Grand Line, but once in the New World? They were nothing special. At the end of the day, in the pirate world, whether it's martial arts or swordsmanship, everything existed to serve hockey. Whether it was the world's strongest swordsman or martial artist as powerful as Garp, if they did not know how to use hockey, a single Logia-type devil fruit user could render them completely powerless. An even more bizarre Paramsha-type devil fruit ability could directly lead to their downfall. For him, selling the techniques in exchange for his life came with no burden at all. That's the right attitude. Tanaka was quite satisfied. "Are you sure the techniques he gives you will be reliable?" Just as who was secretly celebrating his escape from death, Califa suddenly struck him from behind. "What do you mean by this?" Who's eyes widened in rage. If he weren't already cut into pieces and lying helpless on the ground, he would have immediately gone for the kill against Califa. "Then what do you think I should do?" Watching the Cypher Pol 9 agent members turning against each other, Tanaka casually observed. "If you let the 3 of us live, we will serve you. No one chooses death when given the option to live." Califa was no exception. After realizing Tanaka's intentions, she, who had been prepared to die, suddenly found herself desperately wanting to live. Just like who, she was the same. However, she was a bit greedier. Rather than choosing between her own survival and loyalty to the world government, she chose for both herself and her comrades to live together. "Damn woman." Who gritted his teeth. Califa kept saying 3 people instead of 4, clearly excluding him. That cold-blooded betrayal filled his eyes with murderous intent. No rush. Tanaka remained indifferent to her plea to change allegiances. Instead, he summoned a shadow clone to pick up Who's severed head and take it elsewhere. Who explains the techniques most thoroughly? Who teaches them best? Then that person lives. The moment those words were spoken, Who burst into laughter. "Ha ha ha ha. No one understands the Marine 6 styles techniques better than I do. And you? You're just a weakling. You haven't even mastered the techniques yourself, yet you think you can teach others?" He felt certain he had secured his survival. He had always believed himself to be a genius. Looking across all of Cypher Pol 9 agent, aside from Rob Lucci, no one knew the techniques better than him. Califa bit her lip lightly, not refuting his claim. She knew he was telling the truth. When it came to mastery of the techniques, not only was she inferior, but even if she, Blueno, and Jabra combined their knowledge, they still wouldn't match Who alone. But knowing that, was she really willing to just hand over her chance of survival? "Alright. Califa, you can start telling me about the techniques now." After sending his shadow clone to interrogate Who separately, Tanaka gestured for Califa to speak. However, her next words took him completely by surprise. Chapter 96, Tsunada's immunity training bears fruit. How about discussing something else instead? Califa first tidied up her appearance, then, without mentioning anything about Marine 6 styles, subtly shifted the topic elsewhere. As an intelligence agent, she was well aware of her own strengths. So, at the moment when Tanaka created his shadow clones and prepared to interrogate both herself and Who separately, she abandoned the idea of using Marine 6 styles as a bargaining chip for survival. Since this was about persuasion and she was a woman, naturally, the first step for she was to adjust her posture. Fortunately, because she was the backup plan, she had not participated in the ambush against Tanaka. As a result, she wasn't left on the brink of death like Jabra and Blueno, nor was she cut into pieces like Who. She was relieved that, In front of Tanaka, she still maintained an appearance that made it difficult for men to look away. Her white blouse was stretched to the limit, the buttons threatening to burst at any moment, fully emphasizing the overwhelming dominance of her bust. Her makeup was exquisite, paired with gold-rimmed glasses and high heels. Even though she wore a marine uniform instead of a tight black skirt with fishnet stockings, her natural charm still exuded a full forbidden allure. She was confident in both her beauty and assets. Even if Tanaka was still young, not yet at the age to be tempted by her charms, at the very least, she could minimize any hostility he might have toward her. Other than the Marine 6 Styles techniques, I don't think we have anything else in common to discuss. Tanaka remained calm and composed, completely unfazed by Califa's subtle flirtations and small gestures. Not because he was just a kid and hadn't reached the age to indulge in such things, but because, in the 20 days before he was transported to the One Piece world, he had undergone Tsunoda's personal training every day. And who was Tsunoda? Big. Having not only witnessed but personally experienced the grandeur of a G-Cup Kunoichi, how could he possibly be swayed by an E-Cup intelligence officer like Califa? The Marine 6 Styles is already in your possession, there's nothing to talk about. Rather than wasting time on it, don't you think it would be better to gain some other valuable information while securing it? Califa adapted her tone based on the situation. You can continue wasting time. And then, once I'm done with who's who, I'll kill you. Tanaka looked directly at Califa and spoke in a calm tone. So, that means you're willing to listen to something else before you make a move. A playful smile curled at the corner of Califa's lips, her expression alluring. Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Califa. I am a member of Cypher Pol 9 agent. Although my combat power isn't high, unlike who's who has muscles for brains and only knows how to fight, I rely on intelligence. I know everything about Cypher Pol, including classified secrets that have been erased by the world government and intelligence that is unknown to most. At this point, she paused slightly, as if organizing her thoughts. He is Jabra. In Cypher Pol 9 agent, his combat power is second only to Rabluchi and Who's Who. If the world government had trained Cypher Pol 9 agent in hockey, with Jabra's strength, he would be comparable to a vice admiral. After a few seconds, Califa continued, he is blue and although his combat power is only slightly superior to mine, he has consumed the door fruit, allowing him to turn anything he touches into a door. He can open doors in the air, on flames, and even on a person's body. Although we failed in our mission this time, the world government will not let this go. Next time, they might send stronger marine officers or Cypher Pol 0 agents. Blue and however, can open a door in the atmosphere to a different dimension. In times of crisis, he could help you retreat safely. Knowing she could never match Who's Who when it came to the Marine 6 Styles, she opted for a different approach to gain the upper hand. You admit that Who's Who is stronger than you all. So why should I choose you over him? Tanaka looked at Califa, who was doing everything she could to persuade him. He had to admit, this woman was indeed born to be a spy. Because he only cares about himself. He has no attachments, no burdens, and is difficult to control. We, on the other hand, are different. Whether it's me, Jabra, or Blue and we would always prioritize each other's lives. If you control me, you control Blue and Jabra. Likewise, if you control any one of us, you automatically control the other two. Compared to Who's Who, we are easier to control, easier to use, and more efficient overall. For someone like you, it should be effortless to make some modifications to our bodies and keep us under your control. And besides, you referred to us as a blade sharpened by the world government to carry out its dirtiest deeds. Instead of letting the world government break this blade, why not wield it against them instead? Wouldn't you agree? Califa laid out the stakes clearly, even going as far as to liken herself, Jabra, and Blue and to a weapon, one that could be turned against the world government. Tanaka listened in silence, his gaze flickering slightly, but he gave no immediate answer. Believe me. Believe in our value. We are the ones the world government painstakingly selected and trained from childhood. Whether you see us as mere tools to serve you or as weapons to be wielded, we are exceptional in both roles. In this cruel world, no one can make it alone. Even Gul D. Roger gathered a crew of powerful individuals before he could overpower others and claim the title of Pirate King. Seeing Tanaka in deep thought, Califa quickly pressed her advantage. She had no idea what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure, only by surviving now could she have the right to talk about the future. After witnessing Tanaka's power and methods firsthand, she had no complaints about losing to someone like him. So, for herself and her companions to stay alive, she had no problem lowering her head to someone as young yet terrifyingly strong as Tanaka. So, please allow us to become your tools. With those words, she knelt before Tanaka. And whether intentional or not, As she moved into position, her motions were just a bit too forceful, causing one of the buttons on her blouse to pop off. Her collar fully opened, revealing the entire truth and secrets of an E-rank intelligence officer, leaving nothing to the imagination in Tanaka's direct line of sight. Chapter 97. The moment she knew she fucked up alright, I have to admit. You've convinced me. Tanaka looked down at Califa, not paying attention to her breasts but instead focusing on her eyes. This woman, whether she was in the One Piece world or the Naruto world, would undoubtedly survive well. Perhaps she didn't have the same level of talent as Lucci, but talent wasn't just limited to physical skills or hockey. Moreover, the Dorador fruit was such a useful ability, destroying it so recklessly would be a waste. After all, compared to holding the great power of the Hyūga clan in the Naruto world, in the One Piece world, he didn't even have a single useful subordinate. Of course, he didn't just acknowledge Califa's abilities, he also remembered something she had just said. Cypher Pal 9 agent only prioritizes each other's lives above all else. Today, she bowed her head to him alongside Blueno and Jabra. Tomorrow, she might turn around and stab him in the back with them. So, as you wish. I will take you in. And your companions as well. As soon as he finished speaking, the charming smile on Califa deepened, and she also seemed relieved. After all, she was only 15 years old at the moment. Compared to her time at Anai's lobby, whether in terms of age, strength, or mental resilience, she was definitely lacking. Having not yet experienced the life and death struggles and the highs and lows, it was impossible for her to remain completely calm and unaffected. Since I've agreed to take in Cypher Pal 9 agent, I naturally have my own means of controlling you all. Just as you said, in your eyes, only the lives of your fellow Cypher Pal 9 agent members come first. Tanaka's Byakugan was still activated. With a view without blind spots, it allowed him to capture every minute change in Califa's facial expressions and gaze. He saw it all clearly, including the fleeting sense of relief in her eyes. Suit yourself. Califa straightened her posture, kneeling before Tanaka, naturally exuding a seductive allure that made one want to conquer her. Whether in terms of body or beauty, she wasn't the absolute top, but her natural charm, combined with the grooming from the world government, gave her an air of innate seduction. The easiest way to control me must be through his fruit's ability. As long as I survive and report everything that happened today to the world government. On the surface, Califa appeared completely submissive to Tanaka, but in her heart, she was already plotting. In terms of knowledge and intellect, she was undoubtedly the most well-informed among her companions. After all, coming from a Cypher Pal 9 agent family, she had been exposed to various intelligence and records from Cypher Pal since childhood. So, from the beginning, she had already devised a survival plan, even a way to turn the tables. First, persuade Tanaka to ensure her own safety. Then, allow him to plan some sort of devil fruit ability control on her to gain his initial trust. After that, she would look for an opportunity to return to Anai's lobby and report everything to the world government. As for whatever control Tanaka left on her, it could be solved. If it was poison, the world government had access to the most advanced medical systems in the world, detoxifying it would be no problem. If it was a devil fruit ability, she only needed to train in hockey until it reached a sufficient level to break free from the devil fruit's control. At least, that's what he thought. However, what happened next made Califa recall a certain phrase. It was at this moment he knew he fucked up. Maybe not the exact phrase but something with the same meaning. You must be thinking. Will I use poison, or will I use the power of my devil fruit to control you? Is that right? Tanaka leaned forward slightly, suddenly closing the distance between them until their noses were almost touching. So, tell me, do you think I should use poison? Or would the power of a devil fruit be better? Before Califa could answer, he asked again. Poison. Better not. If you were to simply use poison on me, I would hold on to a sliver of hope, searching for a way to counteract it. In that case, it wouldn't be good for either of us. So, in my opinion, using your devil fruit ability would be the better choice. After all, the Opop fruit must have abilities beyond what other devil fruits can achieve. Of course, this is just my opinion. Ultimately, everything is up to you. Califa felt uneasy deep inside, but on the surface, she maintained the appearance of someone loyally considering things from Tanaka's perspective. Refusing to answer might provoke a killing intent. The best approach was to objectively present the pros and cons of both methods, then offer her own perspective, while ultimately leaving the decision to Tanaka himself. I get the final say? Alright then. I choose neither option. Tanaka gazed deeply at Califa, staring at her until she broke into a nervous sweat. Then, suddenly, he raised his left hand and placed it atop Califa's head. Don't move. Califa instinctively tensed up, but before she could react, an undeniable voice exploded in her ear like a thunderclap. You! What do you intend to do to me? Her unease grew stronger. Her instincts screamed that things were unfolding far beyond her expectations. But right now, she had no choice but to force herself to remain calm, avoid any rash actions, and maintain her previous obedient and submissive demeanor. And so, she allowed Tanaka's hand to rest on her head, doing her best to suppress any reaction that might suggest resistance. She relaxed her body, adopting the posture of a temptress pressing herself against her captor. Caged bird seal. Tanaka watched Calipha's performance, a hint of indifference flashing deep within his Byakugan. His right hand quickly formed seals. With a series of long and complex hand signs, his fingers slightly tightened around Calipha's head. Then, chakra surged from his palm. As the final seal was completed, thin, snake-like green markings emerged from his palm, wrapping around her head. These markings linked her eyes and brain together, ultimately forming a cross-shaped curse mark embedded into her forehead. Chapter 98, 60 Seconds of Eternity. The Caged Bird Seal. Tanaka obtained that technique from Hayashi after exterminating the main house. Now, he was the only person across both the Naruto and One Piece worlds who could both use and break the caged bird. He had a deep understanding of the power system in the One Piece world. No matter how bizarre a devil fruit ability might be, as long as one possessed sufficiently strong haki, they could resist its effects. For example, Kaido and Big Mom were not only immune to the cutting power of the Apop fruit, but even the spatial displacement effects of the fruit had no impact on them. Similarly, Law was able to resist Oku's Sick fruit ability using armament haki. This meant that if Tanaka were to rely solely on the Apop fruit to completely control Califa, Jabra, and Blueno, it might not be impossible, but there would be a significant chance of them breaking free. But the advantage of the caged bird was that it was unknown in the One Piece world. And people generally feared what they didn't know more than familiar threats. Thus, from the moment he decided to bring Cypher Pal 9 agent under his command, he had already crafted a specialized binding technique tailored for them. What is this? Califa could distinctly feel an unusual sensation spreading from her head. The caged bird. There was once a person who told me this, simply engraving the caged bird isn't enough. Only by making the person experience its power firsthand can loyalty and fear be engraved into their mind together. Tanaka withdrew his hand from Califa's head. He did not immediately activate the caged bird. Instead, he posed a question to her. I will give you a choice. Die here. Or experience the power of the curse seal once. He spoke each word clearly and deliberately. When Tanaka first obtained the caged bird technique from Hayashi, he was initially amazed by the ingenuity of the Hyūga clan members who created it. But then, he realized just how utterly foolish the main house had been. The caged bird, even from a broader perspective beyond Hidden Leaf Village, was one of the most powerful techniques for controlling people. Yet, the Hyūga clan used it on their own kin? Foolish. It should have been used on people outside the Hyūga clan. Especially on enemies. In his view, engraving this curse seal on the heads of his enemies was the correct way to use it. However, the main house was just like Hidden Leaf Village's Hokage elders. When dealing with their own people, they were highly skilled, intelligent, and ruthless. But when faced with outsiders, they immediately became weak and cowardly. I choose to be loyal to you, Califa answered almost without hesitation. At this point, how could she turn back? If she chose death now, then all her previous submission to Tanaka would have been meaningless. Moreover, as a member of Cypher Pal 9 agent, she had confidence in her ability to endure pain. Being struck by lightning, burned by fire, or cut into pieces, these things could only destroy her body, not break her will. I understand. Hearing this, Tanaka formed a hand seal with his right hand. The once confident Califa's expression instantly changed. The seductive smile that had just graced her lips vanished in an instant, replaced by a look of sheer horror, her mouth gaping open so wide that an egg could fit inside. Immediately afterward, she suddenly slammed her forehead into the sand with a loud thud. As if pressing her head into the ground was the only way to lessen the pain, to hide her humiliation, and to suppress her impending screams. But, within 3 seconds, Califa clutched her head in agony. Even with her face buried in the sand, her bone-chilling screams pierced through, reaching Tanaka's ears. Seeing this, his face remained completely unfazed. This was the power of the caged bird. A technique that had once driven countless branch house members to despair. He had personally experienced it once himself. Califa only lasted 3 seconds. He had endured it for a full 30 seconds. If it weren't for Hisashi pleading on his behalf, it wouldn't have been just 30 seconds, it would have been 60. Ah! It hurts. Stop, make it stop. What was Cypher Pal 9 agent? It was an elite unit selected by the world government from countless children, handpicking those with the highest potential and meticulously training them step by step. They mastered the Marine Six styles and various espionage skills. Their will was unshakable, their bodies were incredibly strong. That was Cypher Pal 9 agent. But now, under the torment of the caged bird, she lasted 45 seconds before regretting her decision. However, as her gaze briefly swept over the unconscious Jabra and Blueno, she gritted her teeth and forced herself to endure, remembering that Haki could potentially break the seal's power. What could make Cypher Pal 9 agent submit? Not some twisted form of dark justice, but the lives of their fellow Cypher Pal 9 agent members. The world government had long allowed Cypher Pal 9 agent members to form emotional bonds on purpose. After all, emotionless killing machines were the easiest to lose control of. But Cypher Pal 9 agent, bound by a web of irreplaceable emotions, were actually easier to manipulate. 60 seconds. To most, it might seem fleeting, but to her, those 60 seconds felt longer than the 15 years she had lived. By the time Tanaka released the hand seal and withdrew his bomb, she was drenched in cold sweat. Her clothes and pants were soaked through, as if she had just been pulled out of the ocean. As the pain gradually receded from her brain and eyes, her body went limp, collapsing onto the sand. Her lips parted slightly as she gasped for breath. Let me tell you something. No matter where you run, whether at the beginning of the Grand Line or at its very end, as long as I wish it, I can activate the cursed seal on your head at any time. Don't even think about finding a way to remove it. This is not a devil fruit ability, so Haki is useless against it. Tanaka took in Califa's wretched state without the slightest hint of sympathy, let alone pity. He hadn't forgotten that this woman had come here to kill him. If he hadn't possessed his current strength, he wouldn't have even had the chance to beg for his life. He would have been beaten half to death by Cypher Pal 9 agent, handed over to the world government, and suffered a fate far more despairing and agonizing than simply being branded with a caged bird. A Cypher Pal 9 agent, drenched in blood, harboring cruel intentions. It didn't matter if she was a woman. It didn't matter if she was more beautiful. It didn't matter if she had a great figure. As long as she harbored ill will toward him, he wouldn't feel the slightest bit of mercy. He would respond with the utmost cruelty. Just like now. Die here. Or live and be marked with the caged bird. No. Even branding her with a seal wasn't enough. Tanaka hadn't forgotten, he had once used the op fruit to break free from the caged bird himself. In the world of One Piece, there were countless devil fruits. And among them, there must be more than one that could break the caged bird. Chapter 99, Hearts in Hand, Minds in Chains. It isn't his devil fruit ability? Califa's hair, cheeks, and clothes were drenched in painful sweat. When she learned that the caged bird engraved on her forehead by Tanaka was not a devil fruit ability, she experienced true despair for the first time. Enduring the torment of the curse seal for a full minute, she never thought of ending her own life. First, because she had already surrendered herself to Tanaka, if she gave up now, her previous submission would be meaningless. Second, because she still cared about her Cypher Pal 9 agent comrades. And third, because she still had hope. She wanted to use Haki to break the caged bird. Maybe he was lying. This had to be his op fruit's ability. Tanaka activated his room, enveloping Califa, who was lying at his feet. Then, he raised his arm, spread his 5 fingers like sharp claws, and struck toward her back. Bang! His hand never physically touched Califa's body, yet her back was torn open. A half-cut heart was extracted from her, and in the next moment, the wound was stitched back together seamlessly. If it weren't for the half-heart now resting in Tanaka's palm, there wouldn't be the slightest trace of any injury on Califa's clothes or back. Haki can resist the effects of devil fruit abilities on oneself. But what if someone takes away half of your heart? In that case, can Haki still regenerate the missing half? Tanaka spread his fingers, revealing the half-heart he had just extracted from Califa's body. He had already tested this on the ninjas of the main house. Using his surgical scalpel to extract a heart remotely wouldn't kill the person, but it would weaken them severely, making it difficult even to stand. However, if only half of the heart was removed, it would have almost no effect on the body. As long as the extracted half wasn't destroyed. Thus, even though Califa had lost half of her heart, she could still walk normally and wouldn't feel any discomfort in her daily life. Even in battle, it would have little to no impact. The caged bird, combined with the op fruit's abilities, was the collar Tanaka had prepared for Cypher Pal 9 agent elites. It's over. Califa was still lying on the sand, but when she lifted her neck and saw the half-heart in his hand, her pupils shrank, and her body trembled as if struck by lightning. If having the caged bird engraved on her had made her understand despair, then having half her heart taken away alongside the cursed seal made her experience utter hopelessness. Chakra and devil fruits. This combination of abilities was devastating. Califa simply couldn't withstand it. One by one, the mental defenses in her heart collapsed, until, for the first time, she felt the urge to submit. For Cypher Pol members, who had long witnessed the ugliness of the world government and the celestial dragons, not all of them were loyal to these ruling forces. They obeyed the world government not out of loyalty, but because they recognized its immense power. As Cypher Pol agents, they were beneficiaries of this power. But the moment their own lives or the lives of their comrades were threatened, the first ones to rebel would often be the Cypher Pol agents themselves. Lucci's Cypher Pol 9 agent experienced this after the Judicial Island incident. Starsea, in Egghead, was no exception. Had Lucci not later led his comrades in a successful counterattack, going from wanted fugitives to Cypher Pol 0 agent operatives, the Grand Line would have gained a Lucci pirates crew instead. You can try to break free from the constraints I've placed on you. But you better not let me find out, and you better succeed in a single attempt. Otherwise, for you, death might not be the worst outcome, it could be a relief. Tanaka reached out, lifting Califa's chin and tilting her head upward. After finishing his words, he withdrew his hand, no longer paying attention to her. Instead, he turned and walked toward the unconscious Blueno and Jabra. Califa's lips twitched slightly at the sight, but before she could even utter a word, the unbearable, bone-deep agony that had just burrowed into her mind resurfaced involuntarily. In the end, now wearing the collar, she chose silence. Without saying a word, she watched as Tanaka repeated the exact same process he had just inflicted on her on both Blueno and Jabra. If earlier she had been pretending to submit, now she was truly bowing her head to him. Hey! Ha ha ha! A bitter, self-mocking smile formed at the corner of Califa's lips. Having completely lost hope, she replayed everything in her mind from beginning to end. He already possesses such terrifying intelligence, power, and methods. Now he's obtained the training methods for hockey. If he masters observation and armament hockey, then, the more she thought about it, the more a chilling dread crept over her. After replaying everything once more, she realized that every move Tanaka had made was actually a well-calculated step in a grand plan. Every decision, every action, had been meticulously thought out. For personal strength, he seized the Ahop fruit, plotted against Rosinant to obtain hockey, and extracted the Marine 6 styles and life return from Who's Who. For building his forces, he subjugated Cypher Pol 9 agent, engraving caged bird seals on himself, Blueno, and Jabra while also extracting half their hearts. Every aspect had been carefully considered. Every detail was firmly under his control. The realization made Califa feel as though she had fallen into a quicksand swamp. The more she struggled, the faster she sank. Perhaps, in the near future, this ocean will be turned upside down because of him. Maybe even the world government itself will regret today's decision. No. They probably won't. After all, with the arrogance of the celestial dragons, they don't even know what regret means. After witnessing Tanaka's strength, his methods, his potential, and his ambition, countless thoughts flooded Califa's mind. She knew full well that the order to capture Tanaka came from the world government. Meanwhile, Marine headquarters had leaned toward recruiting him instead. After all, the Ahop fruit had already been consumed, and with Rosinant as a fleet admiral intermediary, convincing Tanaka to join the Marines wasn't entirely impossible. But now, thanks to the world government's interference, Tanaka and the Marines were destined to be irreconcilable enemies. And of course, the same was true for the world government itself. Califa highly doubted that, after Cypher Pol 9 agent's attempted capture, he would simply swallow his pride and let this slide.